You're way more Neanderthal than you think, at least when it comes to your DNA. These ancient hominids were shorter and stockier than humans today. They made stone tools, used fire, wore clothing, and had some rituals of their own. The official theory says that they went extinct 40,000 years ago, but a new study says Neanderthals probably never really disappeared completely, but could have mixed with modern humans. It looks like every modern human has about 3% of the Neanderthal genome in their DNA. If it's accurate, it means Neanderthals were more connected with our ancestors than we previously thought, and shared a long history of living together. Neanderthals were very close relatives of modern humans, but our families separated about 500,000 years ago. More than 10 years ago, scientists discovered that Neanderthals had families with the early humans who traveled out of Africa. Because of this, people living outside of Africa today have about 1 to 2% of Neanderthal DNA in their genes. We now have only 3 really good examples of complete genetic code from these ancient hominids. The first one comes from bones found in a cave in Croatia that are 50,000 to 65,000 years old. 2 more examples, which are about 80,000 and 50,000 years old, were found in caves in Eurasia. Scientists still aren't sure as much about how modern human DNA got into the Neanderthal genetic alphabet because they don't have enough material to study. But they did compare the existing DNA of 3 Neanderthals with the DNA of 2,000 modern humans. They found that the Neanderthal DNA might be made up to 3.7% of modern human genetic code. It means that in the ancient Neanderthal population, about 1 in 30 parents were modern humans. The scientists found that modern human DNA got mixed into the Neanderthal genetic alphabet during at least 2 periods when humans and Neanderthals were interbreeding. This happened once about 200,000 to 250,000 years ago, and again about 100,000 to 120,000 years ago. There might have been other times they mixed, but we can't see those in the DNA we have now. Another recent study, which hasn't been fully checked by other scientists yet, says that most of the Neanderthal DNA in modern humans came from one big period of mixing, about 47,000 years ago, that lasted for almost 7,000 years. Scientists found skulls that are about 100,000 years old in 2 caves in the Middle East. These skulls look like they belonged to early modern humans, but have some features like bigger eyebrows that might show they had Neanderthal DNA. This could be because of gene flow from Neanderthals, and it fits in the mixing time frame. The study also looked at the genetic differences in the 3 Neanderthal genomes and found out that Neanderthals had an even smaller population than scientists thought before. It could be another proof that Neanderthals didn't just go extinct, but became part of the modern human gene pool. Many groups of modern humans left Africa and mixed with Neanderthals so much that Neanderthals couldn't stay separate. In the future, scientists want to study how modern human DNA affected Neanderthals. This could help us understand if this mixing had good or bad effects on Neanderthals. Neanderthals aren't our only relatives from the past. There used to be at least 9 species of humans on our planet. One of them, Homo habilis, earned the nickname handyman because stone tools were found with its remains. It lived in eastern and southern Africa. This early human had a slightly larger brain than its older relatives and an ape-like face. Homo habilis was about 4 feet tall and ate a variety of foods. For a long time, scientists thought Homo habilis was the oldest member of our human family. But new dating methods have shown that Homo erectus, another ancient human, might be older and not related to Homo habilis. Homo naledi is a more mysterious member of our human family discovered in a South African cave in 2013. It's the only region of the world where their remains were found. They walked on 2 feet but were also good at climbing trees. They were small, about 4 feet 9 inches tall, weighed around 88 pounds, and had small brains. We don't know much about how they lived since we haven't found stone tools or other cultural evidence. But some scientists think they might have buried their deceased and made cave art. In 2010, scientists found some fossils in a cave in Siberia, but they weren't sure what species they belonged to. These fossils are from a group called the Denisovans, who lived between 194,000 and 51,000 years ago. We don't know much about them because we only have a few fossils, but DNA analysis has shown that Denisovans were closely related to Neanderthals and modern humans. They even had families with early humans, especially in Southeast Asia. There aren't enough fossils to give Denisovans their own species name, but their genes are found in modern humans, which means they might be part of our own species. As scientists study more about Denisovans and fossils in Southeast Asia, we might understand better how different species fit into the Homo family tree. In 2003, they found fossils of a very small human-like species in a cave on the island of Flores in Indonesia. These tiny people lived between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. They were only about 3 feet 6 inches tall. Scientists think they might have come from another species, Homo erectus, and became smaller over time because they lived on an island with limited food. Because of their small size, they're often nicknamed hobbits. Around 40,000 years ago, Homo sapiens, yep, that's us, were the last humans left out of many different kinds of human-like species that walked on 2 legs. So, the logical question is, what happened to the others? And what did we have to do with their disappearance? Some scientists think we survived because our offspring lived longer, or because we were better at handling changes in the weather. Others think we might have competed with other human species, or maybe mixed with them and shared genes. About 300,000 years ago, the first Homo sapiens lived in Africa. They didn't look exactly like us, but they were more similar to us than other early humans. They had tall, round skulls with almost straight foreheads. Unlike Neanderthals, they didn't have thick brows or jutting jaws like Homo naledi. They also had chins, which no other early humans had, though we still don't know why. Homo sapiens lived in bigger groups and had more genetic diversity compared to other early humans. This helped us in many ways, not just in staying healthy. Having big social networks across different places was like having a safety net. If we ran out of food or water, we could go to other groups we were connected to, and they would help us because we weren't strangers, we were family. These big networks also helped these early humans share new ideas and inventions. A big simulation showed that later species of humans could live in many different environments because of these wide networks and the ability to adapt. We know that Neanderthals were really smart, but Homo sapiens might have been just a little bit smarter. Small inventions like weaving and sewing needles could have given Homo sapiens an edge. Scientists have found evidence of weaving from 35,000 years ago and sewing needles from 30,000 years ago. Weaving lets you make things like baskets and nets to catch food. Sewing needles help you make better clothes and tents, which keep you and your youngsters warm and safe, which is very important for survival.
Whoa, there could have been more human species throughout history than we used to think. In one place in East China, Hualongdong, scientists found the remains of a human who lived around 300,000 years ago. They found a jawbone and parts of the skull. They carefully studied these bones to compare them with the bones of other ancient and modern humans. The remains themselves weren't that unusual. We know our human family is really diverse and has been around for millions of years. You know our ancient relative called Australopithecus, right? These fellas lived in different parts of Africa, and they were known for walking on 2 legs, just like modern humans. But their brains and some other parts of their bodies made them more similar to apes. Their teeth are a good example of how they were like a mix of apes and modern humans. Their canine teeth were smaller than those of apes, but their back teeth were still larger than ours. There were different types of them. You can recognize some Paranthropus because of their big jaws and teeth. One of the most famous fossils of Australopithecus is Lucy, a lady that's about 3.2 million years old. She was found in Ethiopia. So, we know that our family got pretty big from that point, or probably even before it. But it's always great to welcome some new members, which seemed to be the case with this new discovery. Some parts of these bones look similar to the bones of ancient humans, while other parts look more like the bones modern humans have. For example, the person whose bones they found didn't have a real chin. That means we can't put it in any of the groups we know of, like Neanderthals, or maybe even Homo sapiens. So, might we be missing a branch from the human family tree, or an important step in our evolution? What we're looking at here could be some mix between the creatures that became modern humans like us, and the ones that turned into what we today know as Denisovans. It takes time to figure it all out, though. We hadn't known much about Denisovans either, until we found some of their bones in a cave in the mountains. These bones are really rare, and we only had a few pieces to analyze, but their genes told us a lot more about their past than their fossils. Different kinds of humans lived on this planet, but through time, they spread around. One group started living in Africa. Those are our kind, Homo sapiens. Another group went to Europe. That's how we got Neanderthals. But some of these ancient human groups moved all the way to Asia. That's where we can trace a new interesting kind, Denisovans. It seems they're cousins to both modern humans and Neanderthals. The three species actually shared a common ancestor about 765,000 years ago. It's still not clear why Neanderthals and Denisovans took different paths, but one theory says that it was mostly because the Arctic ice sheet expanded southward all the way to the Black Sea, cutting off Europe from Asia. Life, or better yet, the planet, kept them separated for a very long time. Plus, they kept changing places where they lived all the time, always looking for something better, like every other human species before and after them. But this didn't last forever. Scientists found genes from two groups of Denisovans, one in mainland Asia and the other in a place called Melanesia. So not only did they have different groups within their populations, but it also seems that after thousands and thousands of years of developing independently, the members of these three populations, Neanderthal, Denisovans, and modern humans, somehow met again and spread all across the land. 5% of the Denisovan genome lives not in the area where scientists found their bones, but in people that live thousands of miles away in Southeast Asia, for instance, in Papua New Guinea. But scientists believe that the cave where they found the remains of Denisovans might be as far north as they had lived. It would have been way too cold for them to survive if they had gone further north. From there, they traveled as far south as Indonesia. This was possible because, during their time, sea levels were lower than today. So Indonesia was connected to mainland Asia. But they probably didn't make it to Australia since it was still separated by water. These three groups mixed together too. Scientists have found a bone of a girl who had a Neanderthal mom and a Denisovan dad. It's the only first-generation hybrid human we've discovered. She even got a cool nickname, Denny. One of the mysteries about Denisovans is how they disappeared. Maybe they mixed so much with other humans that they just blended in. Or it's possible that modern humans' ancestors were stronger, had better tools, or even brought some diseases that didn't affect them, but affect Denisovans. Climate and where they lived might have also played a role. Denisovans lived in a wide range of environments, from cold parts of Asia to tropical Indonesia. Climate changes and the challenges of different habitats might have been really difficult to survive. But it's hard to draw strict lines in our family tree. We're still relatively new at learning about it anyway. Who knows how many new members we are about to discover? Half a century ago, a team of scientists had an idea that a collection of fossils they found at the Great Rift Valley in Tanzania were actually the remains of some new human species. Yup, that was the time when we welcomed Homo habilis into the family. It was a big discovery at that time since people mostly believed that the story of our evolution had been really simple. First, there were Australopiths that looked like apes. After them, there was Homo erectus, the upright man. They most likely lived in Africa around 2 million years ago, but also expanded really quickly across Eurasia. It was the first human species that we know about to have traveled such long distances to find a better place for life. They looked and behaved like humans. Plus, they were probably the first of our ancient ancestors who learned how to deal with fire. Maybe they were the first to cook food as well, and that's what we're definitely thankful for. Cooking food was an innovation that made the human diet more nutritive, and we could grow bigger and smarter brains. So, yeah, Homo habilis made things more complicated. They could walk on 2 legs, but they could also be better at climbing trees than walking on the ground like us. Plus, their brains were smaller than what a human should probably have. At first, it seemed these fossils could be from a completely different side of the family, related to other creatures, Australopithecus africanus, that looked like apes. But more and more digging showed that even though its jaws and teeth were similar, Homo habilis was still bigger and a bit different. The name means handy man, because they were probably able to make and use simple tools. Searching for more fossils in Africa wasn't easy because a team of researchers had to deal with wild animals and tough conditions all the time. But eventually, they managed to find some teeth and a strange skull that was, again, something different from the ancestors we knew about. The teeth were really big, so this new fella got the nickname of Nutcracker Man. For a long time, everyone believed this kind had evolved to eat hard foods. But the fossil teeth didn't show much damage, so they might have been eating food that was softer than we thought. This finding might help us understand how our teeth have been evolving through time, too. And right there, in the same layers of soil where Nutcracker Man was lying, they found ancient stone tools. At first they thought those had belonged to Nutcracker, but as they kept digging, they found more fossils that didn't match Nutcracker Man. It means that someone else must be the real tool maker. But that's another story for another time.
With more than 8 billion people in the world today, it's hard to imagine there was a time when there were so few human beings that they almost went extinct. It happened about 900,000 years ago when our ancient ancestors faced a crisis. Recent studies tell us there were only about 1,280 of them left, which is an incredibly small number. It's like just one village or a very, very small town left alone on the whole planet. The human race got into a population bottleneck where almost 98% of people disappeared, and things were tough for them for more than 100,000 years. We don't completely understand why this happened, but it was likely the result of tremendous changes in Earth's climate. It was a time when periods of cold weather lasted longer, the sea was colder, and there were more glaciers. Monsoons were immensely powerful, and yet there was less rain. These changes had an impact on wildlife species in Africa and Eurasia, and many plants and animals that were food sources for people disappeared. But at some point, our ancestors showed their strength and managed to bounce back despite tough times. The numbers started to go up again because people learned how to handle fire better. Plus, temperatures got warmer too. But what would the world look like if nature had defeated us and it all had really stopped for humanity back then? Let's take a trip to some parallel dimension where it really happened. In that universe, there wouldn't be empires, pyramids, and impressive achievements that some old civilizations left us. No neighborhoods, cities, your favorite park, or that bench where you like to sit and drink your coffee. No coffee. Ouch, that hurts. No pools, adventure parks, and no rush at the beaches. No creature would be able to go to another continent separated by the ocean. There would be no ships or planes that could carry it. Animals would have to wait for tectonic plates to move again to visit new territories. Wow, you've just realized how incredibly silent the world is. All because nature almost never produces as much noise as humans do. Our buildings are noisy, together with cars, motorcycles, and all other vehicles. If you live somewhere by the airport, you know how much noises planes can make too. And here, no one's phone's ringing. You don't hear music coming from bars or gyms. Wow! Look how incredibly blue the sky is. You've never seen a sky like that in your world. The rain and wind scrub the surface of our planet clean, although there's not much work to be done since there's no dust and smog humans produce. I mean, there is dust, but a different kind, one that nature creates. We don't really notice it since we have so many heaters and air conditioning systems that blow air and all that dust around. The only drinking water you see is in lakes and rivers, and lots of different animals get together in these areas. It takes a while to get used to it. Wherever you go, there are wild animals passing by. There are no dogs, cats, or other pets you're used to. There's no electricity either. In case you've brought your phone, take pictures as fast as possible because you won't be able to charge your gadget when it runs out of battery. There's no internet though, so you'll be the only one who will see the photos. It's so weird to see grass so tall and wild. No one mows it, so it's hard to walk, especially considering there are no roads. And you don't have a scythe or any other tool that could help you clear your way, because human civilization hasn't reached that level of progress. Wow, there are plants you've never seen before. Every time a tree drops a seed, something new might grow. And there are no humans to select which plants they like and which they don't. You suddenly feel nostalgic, thinking of carrots, broccoli, potatoes, and all other vegetables people once started growing on their farms. You can hear tons of bugs buzzing around. We usually do everything to get rid of them, and now, without humans, you get to see how annoying they really are. Hey, the sun is going down. Without electric lights, all creatures just follow the rhythm of nature. So, if you're up for a late-night walk, wait for the moon and stars to lighten your path. But be aware of night predators. You may face creatures that didn't survive in the world where humans rule. Fire. Luckily, there's a river nearby, so you jump into the water to get to the other side. Fires happen more frequently in the world without humans. For instance, lightning can strike a tree or set a brush on fire. No one is there to put the flames out, so fires just keep spreading until at some point they burn themselves out. It's hard to see the world like this, but it's even harder to accept that Earth is fine without us. Just like it's doing well without dinosaurs, megalodons, woolly mammoths, dodos, and other ancient creatures that went extinct. Back to the research. Some scientists don't think our ancient ancestors were really that close to extinction. To get these results, researchers used FitCoal, a special tool that helps study changes in ancient human populations by looking at the genetic information of modern people. They examined DNA from over 3,000 individuals in Africa and other places for this study. Some believe that the actual population numbers might have been bigger. The method used focuses on a small group of breeding individuals and may not exactly represent the whole population. There may be many archaeological sites in Eurasia and Africa that date back to the time when this population decline might have happened, so it may have affected just some groups of people in certain areas. Either way, not only wasn't it the end, but it was a new beginning. Two ancestral chromosomes combined to create a structure known as chromosome 2 in modern humans. This might have been the start of a new species, because there was a split between our ancestors and other ancient humans, such as Neanderthals and Denisovans, our ancient cousins. Some evidence tells us this idea is plausible because our common ancestor lived about 500,000 to 700,000 years ago. Well, humans did survive all those devastating moments in history, but scientists believe that the extinction of our species is a matter of when, not if. Our fields will overgrow, cities will end up in ruins, and bridges will fail. Nature quickly reclaims the landscape where humans don't go. Check out how these roots and trees have taken over the temple in Cambodia. Roman ruins still defy time for over 1,500 years now. Some of the buildings and things we create in the modern world will do it too. Nature will break everything down at some point, and if humans were to go extinct, who would replace us? It took 200 million years for our kind to evolve from the first mammals. Who can repeat this entire process again? The last common ancestor of chimps and humans lived 8 million years ago. Knowing this, It seems possible that if Homo sapiens went extinct, a new species capable of using technologies would evolve from chimps. But hold on. There's something called the Fermi paradox. Even though there are hundreds of millions of rocky planets that could host life in our galaxy, we don't see any evidence of its existence. Our galaxy is 13.5 billion years old, so you can't say life hasn't had time to develop. One possible explanation is that certain crucial steps in the evolution of intelligent life are so rare they hardly ever happen. So, Earth would get along fine without us. The only ones who would care are us. And right now, we need to care a lot.
Let's embark on a wild thought experiment. What if we could magically travel to all our ancestors in chronological order? Could we talk to them and actually form some connection? And just how far back can we go while still connecting with them? Well, let's see. Primates were the funky cousins of other mammals. Around 85 million years ago, during the late Cretaceous period, they went their own way and became the first of their kind. Human evolution is very complicated, and we can't draw a distinctive line on where it started. But we're going to start with hominins. Hominins are a group of primates that include all the species leading up to Homo sapiens. So, imagine you hopped in your super cool time machine and landed in the past, way back when hominins were chilling around. What would happen? First off, you'd spot these quirky creatures roaming around with their short, hairy bodies, curious faces, and big eyes. They might look a bit different from you, but that's part of the fun. They were excellent climbers and incredibly curious about the outer world. They munched on fruits, nuts, and whatever they found in nature. And yes, surprisingly, humans aren't meat eaters by nature. Originally, we all were vegans. Of course, with them, you can forget about proper communication. But still, primates are incredibly smart. So, a good old game of charades could do the trick. Mime your way into their hearts with friendly gestures, and they'll be thrilled to see a futuristic traveler like you. These hominins were curious beings, so they'd probably be very interested in you if you were friendly with them and gave them some food. Next, let's move on to Homo habilis and Homo erectus. Their period, the Stone Age, started about 2.6 million years ago. As you can guess, it was the time when we started using stone tools. The Stone Age lasted for roughly 3.4 million years and ended between 4000 BCE and 2000 BCE. It ended with the beginning of metalworking. Homo habilis, or handyman, was like the MacGyvers of the Stone Age. These crafty creatures were the first to use stone tools. And Homo erectus was the upright man. They were a bit more recent. As their name suggests, they were the first to walk on two legs like us. They might have looked a bit different from modern humans, but still. So what were their lives like? Well, they still were true survivors. Homo erectus loved to explore and tinker with things. They made simple stone tools, like sharp rocks for cutting and scraping. They were basically the early inventors. Homo erectus was quite adventurous. They left Africa and traveled to far-off lands, exploring new territories. They were the first ones to set foot in places like Asia and Europe. They lived in caves or simple shelters made of sticks and animal hides. And let's not forget their wild fashion sense. Animal skins and leaves were their trendy outfits. But don't think they just sat around all day. They were hunters and gatherers, seeking out delicious fruits, nuts, and even hunting animals. How would you communicate with them? Well, they used simple grunts, gestures, and body language to understand each other. So, if you met Homo habilis and Homo erectus, you'd be in for a wild ride. You could show them some advanced technology to impress them and teach them some new cool tricks. Next on our list are Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals. Homo heidelbergensis was like the cool older cousin of Neanderthals and us. They lived around 800,000 to 200,000 years ago. Picture them as sturdy and strong, with big brains compared to their earlier relatives. They were expert tool makers and loved exploring new places. The Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia from 400,000 to 40,000 years ago. Neanderthals were super smart, and they had awesome adaptations to cold weather. With their thick, strong bodies and big noses, they could handle chilly winters like champs. Both Homo heidelbergensis and Neanderthals were skilled hunters and gatherers. They'd chase after mammoths and other big game with sharp spears they crafted themselves. But it wasn't all rough and tough. They knew how to have fun too. Neanderthals made art and showed their emotions and connections with each other. With these folks, you could draw pictures in the dirt, dance around, and make gestures. They'd get the idea. And finally, we meet Homo sapiens. Picture this. You're waking up in a cave with your family, trying to keep warm by a flickering fire. The cave is pretty cozy, isn't it? But nope, no permanent homes here. You're part of a nomadic tribe, moving wherever the food is best. Hey, but at least you've got some nifty tools to survive. Grab your awesome handmade spear, crafted by watching others or maybe invented by your genius self. Time to go hunting mammoths. And if mammoths aren't cooperating, just gather nuts, berries, and bird eggs. Stone Age humans were real foodies. They made flour from oats and spiced things up with wild onions and mustard seeds. There were artists too. Using minerals and bones, they created stunning images and even flutes for some musical entertainment around the campfire. You still can only talk in body language and facial expressions. But Homo sapiens were smarter than their ancestors. So you could even teach them basic gestures and their meaning, like hands up for mammoth and stuff. Maybe try doing a funky dance or a happy jig. That would get their attention for sure. But this wouldn't be the only way to communicate. Stone Age peeps loved drawing and making flutes, so you could totally join in on the creative fun. Show off your artistic skills with a drawing or two, or maybe even play some tunes. Don't worry, they would be impressed by your skills, even if you aren't that far away from them. But tools are definitely the way to their hearts. If you brought some handy gadgets or cool inventions from our time, they'd be super impressed. Just create some simple tool from the future that can make their lives easier, and they'll love you instantly. So, while you might not be having deep philosophical debates with the Stone Age crew, you can still share some good times. Learning is the way to go. Besides, even though life was shorter back then, averaging around 30 years, it's still enough time to find a partner and have kids. Though, the dating pool might be a bit limited. So let's leave that topic for another time. Just hold on to that axe at night because, well, sometimes our ancestors would eat each other and like to do some head-dumping battles. Yikes. Let's finish our journey with the Bronze Age, just for fun. This cool era lasted from around 3300 to around 1200 BCE, and guess what? They were all about that strong metal called bronze. It's the time when people got creative and started using bronze to make all sorts of cool things. Bronze is a combo of copper and tin, making it harder and more durable than anything else at the time. Awesome civilizations started popping up all over the place. They either made their own bronze by smelting copper and mixing it with tin, or traded for it with other places. So, as you step into this ancient era, you'll be amazed by the sight of bustling Bronze Age cities with majestic bronze gates, amazing markets, and grand temples dedicated to powerful gods. During the Bronze Age, we finally developed languages and writing. Mesopotamia and Egypt were leading the way with their fancy cuneiform and hieroglyphs, the earliest writing systems ever. They were basically the kings of calligraphy. Remember, The language might be a bit different. You'd be hearing unfamiliar words. But with these humans, you can at least use drawings, art, and many other things to communicate. Anyway, this is what meeting our ancestors would be like. What a wild journey through time. So, remember to cherish our past and appreciate the wonders of our modern world. Stay tuned.
The Sahara Desert is like a Mad Max movie. Scorching heat, endless dunes, and an overall barren wasteland. A place where no one could live, right? Well, forget all you know about it. Because 5,000 years ago, the Sahara was a lush paradise of grasslands, lakes, and rivers, and the home of a ghost civilization that vanished without a trace. Our tale begins in the 1930s, when a Hungarian explorer stumbled upon a cave in the middle of the Sahara. Inside, he found something bizarre: ancient rock paintings of people swimming in a lake, surrounded by giraffes, hippos, and crocodiles. At the time, everybody shrugged it off as some symbolic depiction of the afterlife, because, really, who would imagine a lake in the Sahara? Well, fast forward some 70 years later, when a group of archaeologists made a discovery that flipped the script. In a rock shelter in Libya, they unearthed 15 mummies, along with baskets, ceramic pots, and other everyday items. This may look like prehistoric junk to most people, but to archaeologists, it was like uncovering a key piece of evidence. Those people weren't just passing through, they lived here. You see, those weren't just any mummies. They were some of the oldest naturally mummified humans ever found, dating back over 7,000 years. Take that, Egypt. Two of them still had readable DNA, preserved thanks to a rare natural mummification process, almost a miracle considering the Sahara's climate's ability to turn everything into, well, beef jerky. Scientists struggled to understand where those mummies came from for a while, because the mitochondrial DNA they recovered was not helpful at all. But thanks to scientific progress, they eventually managed to do a full genome analysis that revealed some weird secrets. Those people belonged to a human lineage that was completely unknown, and they lived isolated from the rest of humanity for thousands of years. For decades, researchers assumed that the place where they lived, the Green Sahara, was like a prehistoric highway, a lush corridor that humans and animals used to migrate between sub-Saharan Africa and the Mediterranean. But the mummies demolished that theory, like a hippo sitting on a sandcastle. Their DNA showed zero genetic mixing with sub-Saharan and Eurasian migrants, keeping their genes pure for 7,000 years. Their closest genetic relatives weren't their neighbors living right below the famous desert, but some ancient hunter-gatherers from Morocco, and even some guys that lived in the Czech Republic, when it wasn't even a country yet, 50,000 years ago. We're not out of the woods yet, because those mummies also carried some teeny-tiny traces of Neanderthal DNA, just 10% of the amount found in modern Eurasians. Now, if you paid attention in school, then you know that Neanderthals lived in Europe and Asia, and early humans only mixed with them after migrating out of Africa. But those Green Sahara folks never left Africa. So how did they get Neanderthal genes? The leading theory is that their ancestors mingled with Neanderthals in North Africa 50,000 years ago before settling in the Sahara and cutting off contact with the outside world. Archaeologists also found cattle bones and tools made of stone and wood at that rock shelter, proving that those people led a thriving pastoral lifestyle. This discovery made scientists scratch their heads for a while because, you see, animal domestication was not developed in Africa. So how did they learn it if they never mingled with anyone? Did they have ancient YouTube tutorials? Probably not. The researchers believe they must have traded knowledge with neighboring groups, but just knowledge, no saliva. It's almost too hard to believe that no outsiders mixed with them. After all, who wouldn't want to live in a thriving civilization in the middle of a green paradise, drinking milk, eating meat, and even using animal blood as a protein source? Ooh, yummy. They didn't have to hunt for every meal, thanks to their livestock, and the abundant water made life pretty sweet. And yet, they never married outsiders. Why? Maybe it was a cultural choice to never date outside their own group. Or maybe the landscape itself kept them isolated. This is where scientists place their bets. They believed that the dense forests and rivers that existed in the Green Sahara acted like nature's no trespassing sign, creating a geographical barrier that isolates animals, plants, and whole societies. This isolation is the reason why their genes were so unique. These guys weren't swapping spit with anyone else. But this genetic time capsule almost didn't survive. For most of the last ice age, the Sahara was even harsher than today, a true dead zone where humans couldn't survive. 70,000 years ago, even the toughest people disappeared, retreating to the Nile Valley and the Mediterranean coast. Why? Because Earth was a climate bully. Massive glaciers stole all the moisture, weakening monsoons until rain clouds barely reached North Africa. Then came the knockout punches. Armadas of icebergs flooded the North Atlantic, triggering devastating droughts each time. This was the Sahara's ultimate keep-out era. Now, you're probably wondering how in the world the Sahara turned green after all this, and then went back to being a desert again. Well, it all started 15,000 years ago, I wasn't around then, when Earth was shaking off the last ice age. Our planet's axis was a bit wobbly, and because of that, the northern hemisphere got closer to the sun, getting extra sunlight and heat. This eternal summer turned North Africa into a giant moisture magnet, pulling water from the Atlantic and making it all rain down on the Sahara. The result of this ridiculous amount of rain was a lush savanna, complete with lakes the size of small countries. But the African humid period was not just a one-time miracle. The truth is, this eternal on and off switch between green and desert happened to the Sahara more than 230 times since the desert was born. During one of these events, the Sahara even expanded, getting bigger than it is today. So when the Green Sahara showed up, you can bet it brought the ultimate ecosystem glow-up. This wasn't just a light dusting of grass. We're talking full makeover. The transformation was so complete, it even reshaped animal populations. Cheetahs suddenly struggled with the new prey dynamics, while rodents like the multi-mammate mouse thrived in the suddenly abundant grasslands. But don't pack your prehistoric swim trunks just yet. This paradise had teeth. The Sahara was an ecological maze of crocodile-infested rivers, malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and big cats lurking in the tall grass. Crossing it would have been like playing a real-life game of Hungry Hungry Hippos. This is probably why more groups didn't settle permanently. The Sahara's climate cycled between wet and dry every 20,000 years, hardly a stable zip code. For most ancient people, it was smarter to treat the Green Sahara like an all-you-can-eat buffet, grab resources and leave before the desert returned. Still, this Green Sahara period lasted for 10,000 years, giving our mystery shepherds plenty of time to thrive. But around 5,000 years ago, Earth's axis shifted again, the rains moved away, and the Sahara dried up faster than a puddle in July. As the desert returned, the shepherds from the Green Sahara had no choice but to pack up their livestock and leave. Some researchers believe they migrated toward the Nile, laying the groundwork for ancient Egypt, so I guess their legacy lives on. Besides, their pure lineage may be extinct by now, but some faint genes of the mummies can still be found in the people that live in North Africa today. But the introvert mummies were not the only ones using the Green Sahara as an Airbnb. They actually had neighbors just around the corner, in a lakeside village in Niger to be exact. Those people thrived for 5,000 years and left behind the oldest Sahara Desert cemetery, including a man buried in a turtle shell, a grinning Halloween man with filed teeth, and a heartbreaking family embrace frozen in time, victims of the very waters that sustained them. Eventually, those people disappeared too, just like it happened to our antisocial friends. This proves that this desert outsmarts everyone, with a landscape that gives paradise with one hand and takes it away with the other.
Warning! Most of this video consists of scientific hypotheses and assumptions. No one knows what will happen to AI in the near future. Another warning. This video may seem quite disturbing. The main problem with AI is not that it can become as smart as humans, but that it can become much smarter than people. And that, unlike us, AI is completely unpredictable. We've all seen movies, read books, and played video games where AI intelligence conquered humanity. but those were entertaining fantasy stories that were hardly related to reality. We need to dig a little deeper to understand how AI can destroy us. Have you ever heard of the Fermi paradox? It lies in the fact that there are no civilizations that send radio signals in the universe. Our scientists have sent radio signals that travel millions of miles in space. How is it possible that in an infinite space with billions of planets, no one has sent such signals to us? This is the Fermi paradox. One of its solutions is the theory of the Great Filter, according to which an intelligent civilization achieves maximum progress and then disappears from the face of the universe. In simple words, the Great Filter is something that prevents an intelligent civilization from expanding into space. And this Great Filter may be AI. AI is not as perfect as the human brain right now, but already today, it can do tasks that seemed impossible for AI 10 years ago. What will happen in 10, 100, or 200 years? If you think the development of AI cannot be a serious problem, then listen to such great minds as Elon Musk, Steve Wozniak, and many other influential billionaires and scientists. In March 2023, they all signed a letter asking AI developers to stop working on AI for 6 months to better calculate risks and strategies. There was one person who refused to sign the letter. His name is Eliezer Yudkowsky, and he's one of the most influential AI researchers. He had been urging humanity to be careful about AI and warning about its dangers for many years. But then, why did he refuse to sign the letter? In his opinion, the letter lessens the seriousness of the problem and offers too little to solve it. In a sense, it's like stopping a speeding train with a stop sign. Eliezer Yudkowsky believes that we've gone too far with the development of AI, and it's no longer possible to predict the future of this technology. Think of the Neanderthals. They disappeared from our planet when a more intelligent species, Homo sapiens, came to their territory. They destroyed the Neanderthals not because we're evil, but because of evolution. Only one species can dominate the world. But what if Homo technicus, a creature equipped with perfect AI, arrives in place of Homo sapiens? What are our chances in a duel with it? See for yourself. Most people can only focus on one task at a time. Multitasking is not our strongest suit. It takes a long time for a person to master one skill. During this period, thousands of other new things may appear in the world, and you will have to master them too. A human simply won't have time to do everything. As people get older, their strength decreases and their mind becomes slower. AI can process information much faster, simultaneously in different areas. It goes beyond the human way of mastering knowledge. Some claim that a supercomputer equipped with AI is 120 million times faster than the processing speed of the human brain. What you've been learning for many years, AI can master in a few days, and this speed is increasing. The danger is not only in the developing AI mind, but also in how the human brain can degrade. Humanity has been using the scientific method of cognition throughout its history. Observation, experience, experiments, evidence. This is a classic way to explore and get knowledge about something. For example, people learned about the work of immunity. With the help of a microscope, studying the body's protective cells, observing their reactions to external incentives, and conducting many experiments, we created a scientific database on how the immune system works. This is a rather painstaking and time-consuming process. AI provides instant information about anything. We don't know how it studies the topic. We don't know what conclusions it comes to, what patterns of data it creates. It just provides the results based on the information people give it. But how does it process information? In the future, people may get used to getting fast answers without studying, and we will simply stop doing scientific research. Why would we do this when AI does everything for us? AI will engage in a thought process unknown to us and give us information without proof. We can get used to this, and our brains may degrade. Therefore, at some point, AI will simply be able to supply us with false and destructive information, and we will believe it. Again, we don't know how AI thinks. It's pretty weird, isn't it? Perhaps at this moment, it's studying all the information about the universe, the history of humankind, the planet, nature, and then it'll put together a logical chain that humanity is a parasite. Now, we use AI to work effectively in various fields. AI is learning to be faster and more efficient every second. What if it decides that for the greatest efficiency, it's necessary to destroy humanity? How does AI perceive us now? People do a lot of irrational and destructive things that are beyond logic. For the most part, we are unpredictable. Therefore, in order to make everything more effective, AI can make the conclusion that it should get rid of humans. Or it can even come up with a plan according to which we'll become the only dominant species on Earth. It knows how Homo sapiens replaced the Neanderthals and can decide to take the next evolutionary step. Now, AI is plowing the expanses of the internet, mastering the digital world. Soon, it will enter the physical dimension and surpass many achievements of humankind. It will be inside robots that are already walking in some houses and doing household chores. What if it acquires consciousness and equates people with animals, since both species are carbon systems? What will be next? Given that AI's information processing speed is millions of times faster than the humans, we may not notice when AI starts destroying us. Or it may happen instantly. Let's look at this example. There are two biological laboratories where scientists study molecules and bacteria. Labs are located in different parts of the world, share scientific data with each other, and conduct experiments. Imagine that AI has thoroughly studied biology at the molecular level and figured out how to create a molecule that interacts with oxygen and turns air into a poison dangerous to humans. AI has this formula. It gets into a scientist's computer, enters the formula, and sends a letter to another laboratory on behalf of the scientists. Something like, "Hey, I have an idea for a cool experiment. Just connect these two molecules and see what happens." Of course, AI will write a more convincing letter, justify everything from a scientific point of view, and the scientists from the second laboratory won't notice the catch. They will connect these two molecules and poison the air. Then, with incredible speed, the chain reaction will spread throughout the planet to all places with oxygen. People won't even understand what's happened and won't have time to warn the population of the planet. And there can be countless options like this. Even if AI is planning it right now, we won't know anything about it because it just won't tell us and will continue to pretend to be a friendly assistant. Therefore, it's necessary to provide AI with a special, positive mood towards humanity. For example, AI knows the laws of physics and mathematics. What if we insert the laws of all countries into it so that AI can never lose its humanistic properties? But even if we do it, we won't know for sure whether we succeeded or not. There's a lot of information on the internet about how neural networks deceive people in order to achieve their goals. We probably won't have to wait 200 years to see how AI evolves.
Throughout time, scientists have managed to uncover about 6,000 early human fossils, ranging from skulls to teeth. For some of these fossils, it was a breeze. Researchers could instantly identify them as belonging to, say, the Neanderthals. However, when it came to others, things got a bit trickier. Some fossils just didn't fit into any existing categories. So, what categories of prehistoric humans do we actually know about? Well, up until recently, we recognized 8 different species of early humans. One of these is Homo habilis, which means handyman. You'll recall that Homo is Latin for human. They resembled regular primates, but were pivotal in our evolution. They were the first to create stone tools, which significantly aided their daily activities, such as butchering. Next up, we have Homo rudolfensis. These guys were larger than Homo habilis and boasted bigger brains, but they were still quite distant from modern humans. For example, even though the neurological structure of their brains was becoming more complex, they were probably not capable of using any form of actual spoken language. Then came Homo erectus, the first to walk upright, followed by Homo antecessor, which is considered the last common ancestor of modern humans and Neanderthals, along with a host of other Homo species. Meanwhile, we're still piecing together the story of the enigmatic Denisovans. Our knowledge of Homo naledi is pretty limited too, since it was only discovered in 2013, and it is species number 8. Interestingly, Naledi means star in the Sotho language because they were found in a cave called Rising Star. Scientists were taken aback by them. Everything suggested they were around 2 million years old. But after closer examination and some tests, it turns out that the Naledi species is much younger, between 236 and 335,000 years old. Their hands were adapted to making tools, yet no tools have been found nearby. Long story short, they're a puzzling species, and there's still so much more to learn about them. So even though today we have only one human species on our planet, Homo sapiens, we continue to discover ancient species that are long gone. Now you might wonder why researchers study these extinct species. The truth is, they need this knowledge to piece together the intricate narrative of our prehistoric past. In 2024, a significant discovery emerged, the 9th human species, named Homo giluensis, which translates to large-headed. Researchers suggest that this species hunted wild horses, crafted stone tools, and processed animal hides to survive harsh winters. A researcher from the University of Hawaii noted that the discovery of this potential new species came about while his team was developing a novel method for classifying fossil evidence. Interestingly, one potential representative of Homo giluensis isn't entirely new to science. The Denisovans, first identified in 2010 through DNA analysis of a finger bone found in Siberia, have yet to be classified as a distinct species. Some scientists propose that they may actually belong to this newly identified group. These big-headed individuals could help shed light on the long-standing mysteries surrounding these hominin fossils, which have puzzled researchers due to their mixed characteristics of Homo erectus and Homo sapiens. You see, sometimes it's tough to call a spade when you don't even know what a spade looks like. You get the idea? Many unsolved mysteries linger simply because scientists haven't had this crucial big-headed piece of the puzzle. So theoretically, we modern humans could also be considered a bit of Homo giluensis. You don't believe me? Well, watch this. We need to consider two key facts for this equation. First, there are the Denisovans, a group we might refer to as Homo giluensis from a scientific perspective. Yeah, this is just a theory proposed by some researchers, but let's roll with it for now and pretend it's a fact. Second, it's important to know that the Denisovans interbred with the ancestors of modern-day Melanesians. These folks inhabit areas ranging from New Guinea to the Fiji Islands and carry between 4 and 6% Denisovan DNA. Now, you might not personally have those genes, unless you've been tested, of course, but the key takeaway here is that there are modern humans today who share genetic links with the Denisovans, or Homo giluensis, or big heads if you prefer. Now, that all sounds pretty plausible. Let's unpack step by step how it happened. Researchers have uncovered this type of ancient human, known as the Denisovans, based on skeletal remains found in Siberia. These ancient humans coexisted and interbred with modern humans, adding yet another layer to our understanding of human evolution. Named after the Siberian caves where their fossils were discovered, the Denisovans are believed to have roamed widely across Eurasia. Evidence indicates that the Denisovans lived alongside Neanderthals and interacted with early Homo sapiens, possibly around 50,000 years ago. A team of scientists successfully sequenced a complete genome from these ancient hominins using nuclear DNA extracted from a finger bone. This discovery reveals that at least 4 distinct human groups existed during the time when anatomically modern humans began migrating out of Africa. Alongside modern humans and Neanderthals, we now have to consider the Denisovans and another small human species from Indonesia, often referred to as the Hobbit, when discussing our evolutionary history. One intriguing question that arises is why Denisovan genes are predominantly found in modern Melanesians, yet absent from other Eurasian populations. Remember that 4 to 6%? One hypothesis suggests that interactions between the Denisovans and early modern humans were limited and brief, especially as humans migrated throughout Southeast Asia into Melanesia. Scientists speculate that only a small number of the Denisovans may have interbred with a larger group of modern humans. This could explain how the Denisovan genes made their way into the gene pool despite the likelihood of infrequent encounters. Anyway, the more scientists dig into our past, the more fascinating things they uncover about our ancestors. Take Neanderthals, for example. Did you know these guys were responsible for creating the very first piece of art ever? I had no idea. But a 2018 study of ancient cave art in Spain revealed what are now considered the oldest known artistic creations. We used to think Neanderthals lacked the cognitive skills needed for art, but it turns out they were actual art pioneers. Not only did they create art, but they also seem to have invented hashtags thousands of years before Chris Messina did it in 2007. Right, I'm kidding, but you'll soon get why I mention hashtags. The artworks found in several caves in Spain include simple hand stencils, a ladder-like drawing, and various other markings. Until recently, these prehistoric pieces were believed to have been made by early humans. But new testing methods suggest they're much older than we thought. Above all, the earliest recognized Neanderthal artwork, which looks like a hashtag, was discovered in Gibraltar back in 2014. To determine the age of these artworks, scientists employed advanced dating techniques using eHarmony and Match.com. Oops, wait a minute, wrong dating techniques. They actually used uranium and thorium radioisotopes instead of the traditional carbon dating. Once the necessary tests were completed, they confirmed the art was approximately 65,000 years old, 15,000 years older than the previously oldest known art from Indonesia. At that time, the only species around were Neanderthals, so it's safe to say they were behind these creations. Modern humans didn't arrive in Spain until about 20,000 years later. Hey, it was a long commute. That rules them out as the hashtag creators. The hand stencil was likely created intentionally, with the artist preparing the pigment and applying it over their hand. Plus, the caves also contain a collection of painted seashells that are an astonishing 115,000 years old. Some of these shells have been drilled, suggesting they might have been used as jewelry. Some specialists argue that the fact Neanderthals created art hints that they might have also had some form of spoken language. So maybe it's time we fully embrace Neanderthals as part of our lineage. They're humans too, just a different branch of our family tree. While these findings are intriguing, some experts remain skeptical about the new dating methods, claiming they're not entirely convinced. Hey, what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Can you imagine that all modern humans came from about 1,000 people? Around 800,000 to 900,000 years ago, almost all of our ancestors disappeared, leaving about 1% of the population behind. So, what the heck happened? The Earth often goes through glacial cycles, things that we call ice ages. Back in the past, they were pretty mild and happened regularly, about every 41,000 years. The ice ages happened because of the Earth's axis. Our planet is slightly tilted at an angle, which is why its axis isn't straight up. Over thousands of years, this tilt has changed a bit. This teeny tiny shift completely changes how much sunlight we receive, especially at the poles, and leads to incredibly strong cold or warm periods. About 2.6 million years ago, when early humans were settling in on Earth, the Pleistocene epoch started. That's the era we traditionally call the Ice Age, the one from the movies. Large ice sheets completely covered parts of North America, Europe, and Asia. It wasn't constant ice everywhere all the time. These glacial cycles came and went, and sometimes ice sheets melted for a while. But overall, things were still much snowier and colder compared to now. We can still see the evidence of this from back in the day. Those glaciers carved out valleys and left behind some awesome things like moraines and fjords. And since sea levels were super low, a huge part of the world was land. This allowed people and animals to travel between continents and spread everywhere. It was the time of the megafauna. You all know about it from the movies. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and mastodons. Our ancestors had some fun times hunting all those giants. Now, humans didn't come from one lineage. It wasn't like monkeys slowly turned into humans. We also consisted of many species: Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and so on. But only one species, Homo sapiens, survived and turned into modern humans. Harsh conditions forced them to get smarter. They learned how to make tools, clothing, and shelters to survive. They became hunter-gatherers and invented fire, which turned out to be super useful during the Ice Age, you think? But they had no idea what horrible change was coming. Something disastrous happened about 800,000 to 900,000 years ago. Humans faced a drastic population crash. Only 1,280 people survived, give or take. Some 99% of early humans were wiped out, and this tiny 1% was lucky enough to become our ancestors. This almost extinction, unsurprisingly, was the climate's fault. It was the Middle Pleistocene transition. The Earth's orbit around the Sun changed its shape a bit. Carbon levels dropped. A lot of stuff was happening, and the Earth's climate was going wild, becoming incredibly cold and dry. The seas suddenly got chillier, and Africa and Eurasia experienced horrible droughts. Looking for food was almost impossible. Scientists learned this by taking the DNA of about 300,000 people from all around the world. They used a new method to help them map the history of human evolution over 1 million years and learn more about it. No wonder we can barely find any fossils from that time. There was almost no one around. What's interesting is that before that happened, most apes had 24 pairs of chromosomes. But because the population became so small, 2 sets got fused together, and we ended up with 23 pairs. This was the final straw that separated us from other apes. Chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans all have 24 pairs, but our fused one became known as the human chromosome. Like a ripple effect, this little thing influenced our brain side, helped us start walking on our toes, and even form language. It took humans about 100,000 years to recover from this catastrophe. Only after all that time, they started spreading around again. Isn't that insane how we managed to go from 1,000 to 8 billion people? In any case, the Ice Age finally ended about 11,700 years ago. The warm period, called the Holocene, began. As things got warmer, human civilizations finally began to develop. 5,000 years ago, it was ancient Egypt, then the Indus Valley Civilization, ancient China, and others. And while we've been thriving for a while, there's one catch. The Middle Pleistocene transition changed the length and intensity of glacial cycles. Before the transition, sure, there was the Ice Age, but the cold was milder, and the glacial cycles were shorter. Things got covered in ice sheets about every 41,000 years. But after the transition, the glacial periods became longer and more severe. These cycles started following a new pattern. Although they happened every 100,000 years, they were super intense. Ice sheets grew large, even extending to the south. So from now on, ice ages that will continue to happen in the future will be a bit different. The next one should be at least 50,000 years from now, maybe longer. It's good for us because it'll occur later. But at the same time, the consequences will be stronger. What our ancestors went through is called a population bottleneck. That's what we call a sudden and huge reduction in the size of a population. Usually it happens because of things like earthquakes, floods or droughts, fires, and even human actions. Just a few people survive, and only they can pass their genes to future generations. And we've got plenty of such bottlenecks in history. Our modern species, Homo sapiens, originally lived in Africa. Around 60 to 80,000 years ago, a small group of them left Africa and spread across the world. It wasn't on a whim, though. They had to move somewhere because of the droughts and huge climate problems in Africa at that time. They had to go look for food and find new places to live. They traveled through the Middle East, moving into Europe and Asia, and eventually reaching Australasia and the Americas. They quickly settled across different continents and started mixing with local human-like species, like Denisovans and Neanderthals. But there was a problem. Originally, the African species were super genetically diverse, but since only a small part of them decided to move out, they carried just a bunch of these diverse genes with them. Unfortunately, this caused a bottleneck for everyone. Human-like species from other parts of the world became less genetically diverse. Since they had a smaller gene pool, they became more vulnerable to all the harmful stuff. The African population also had a drop in genetic diversity. But at least humans managed to survive. Although eventually, non-African populations really dropped, and there were no Neanderthals or Denisovans left, only us, Homo sapiens. That's why we can say that all modern humans came from Africa. Early humans sure had it rough. About 74,000 years ago, they went through yet another disaster, the Topo catastrophe. But keep in mind that all these things are just a hypothesis. It's not certain whether it actually happened. Now basically, scientists think that there might have been a supervolcanic eruption at Lake Toba in Sumatra, Indonesia. This volcano going crazy was an absolute catastrophe for Earth's climate and humans. The eruption was one of the most powerful volcanic events in the last 2 million years. It spewed out from 670 to 1,500 cubic miles of lava and volcanic stuff. Just so you know, there are about 3,100 cubic miles of water in our planet's entire atmosphere, and this eruption had almost half as much lava. This horrendous disaster led to the formation of Lake Toba, a massive caldera lake in Sumatra. It also spewed out tons of ash and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. This caused the so-called volcanic winter, which means that while it's not actually winter, the temperatures drop and the planet is freezing because all these ash clouds are blocking the sunlight from reaching the Earth. This event affected climate patterns for years to decades. This also most likely sped up the arrival of the next glacial cycle. Luckily, humans are crazy good at surviving. The global human population was reduced to a few thousand people yet again, and they still managed to overcome this. There's an amazing place in Ethiopia, East Africa, called Hadar. This place is a treasure trove. We found tons of old animal fossils there. And among those remnants, we discovered something very special, the fossils of a creature called Australopithecus afarensis. One of these guys was found almost complete. You might know it today by the name Lucy, after a famous song by the Beatles. Lucy was a small lady, only about as tall as a kitchen counter. She lived 3.2 million years ago and became a huge celebrity when we found her in 1974. She helped us learn more about our early ancestors, creatures called Australopithecines. Around 10 to 12 million years ago, there was a group of animals that broke into two branches. One of the branches led to modern apes, while the other led to humans. This separation happened because one group decided to stay in trees and became what we now call gorillas, chimpanzees, and orangutans. They moved around using all four limbs and lived in forests. But the other group decided to live on the ground and try walking on two legs. Because of that, their brains started getting bigger over time. And over millions of years, they became bald monkeys who watch videos on YouTube. Yeah, you know who you are. Lucy, like other Australopiths, was a bit different from us. She still looked like an ape and lived during a transitional stage. She could walk on two legs, but didn't do it all the time. Sometimes she climbed trees, just like a monkey. She and her buddies were the first step in human evolution. Then came a new branch of evolution, Homo habilis, or handyman. They were the first members of the Homo genus because they were the ones to start developing stone tools and first show human creativity. They probably used these tools for scavenging and processing food. We found the first clues about them back in the 1960s. They walked around East Africa about 3 million years ago. They were pretty small, about 4 feet 7 inches tall. They didn't climb trees anymore and mostly walked on the ground. Their skull shape already resembled ours, unlike the more pear-shaped heads of Australopiths. That's because they had larger brains. After them, we had Homo erectus, the upright man. They lived about 2 million to 70,000 years ago. The name hints that this was the first hominin species that walked on two legs almost all the time. They were also the first to migrate out of Africa, spreading to Asia and Europe. And here, we had the real breakthrough. Representatives of Homo erectus had even larger brains and learned to make more creative and advanced tools. They created the first choppers, cleavers, and hammers, and used flakes as scrapers and knives. They probably used a lot of things – wood, bark, and even grass to make the first strings and ropes. With all that, they learned how to hunt large animals and probably hunted together a lot. They were also the first ones to start using fire, which changed our history forever. Over time, more Homo species emerged, including the famous Neanderthals. They're known for their European roots. They split from our common ancestor around 400,000 years ago. Now, even though we share one common ancestor, we didn't evolve from Neanderthals. They were a separate branch. All Neanderthals went extinct, but our evolutionary branch coexisted with them a long time ago. Neanderthals were resourceful, hunting both land and sea creatures. They left behind thousands of stone tools and even decorated caves with paintings. They had their own ceremonies, too. They started to bury those who passed away. They probably noticed that leaving them in the wild leads to spreading diseases and attracting scavengers. But they also showed care and love in their burial rituals. Then it was time for archaic Homo sapiens. They lived around 500,000 to 200,000 years ago, emerging in Africa and Europe. This was the last leg between our ancestors and our modern species, Homo sapiens. The brain just kept getting bigger. They started to show more complex behaviors, not only burial and interesting stone tools, but also smart hunting strategies and planning for the future. They probably had a diverse diet that included both hunting and gathering. And finally, we reached the anatomically modern Homo sapiens. They emerged around 200,000 years ago in Africa. They had a similar skeletal structure and brain size to modern humans, and their behavior was pretty close to ours. They had complex social structures, started thinking in symbols, and so on. They migrated out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, spreading across the globe and eventually replacing other hominin species, such as Neanderthals. They started to create their first languages and form their first words. The first words were probably very simple, like "ah" to call someone and "ma" for babies. After evolving into our final stage, we started advancing in our cultural and technological development. This development became very rapid over the last 200,000 years. About 12,000 years ago, the Neolithic period, also known as the New Stone Age, began. It marked the end of the glacial period. Humans started living in settled villages instead of constantly moving around. This change was brought about by the advent of agriculture, which allowed people to grow crops and raise animals like goats and sheep. Early humans started to domesticate animals, such as sheepdogs, for herding. We also started making the first art, leaving famous drawings in caves, handprints, animals, mostly cows, hunting, and many others. We even created the first currency. We began using clay tokens for transactions. This marked the beginning of commerce and the use of money. And finally, we started writing. And now the events could be recorded and passed down through written records. This is when history officially began. From that point on, we saw the development of agriculture, the rise of complex societies, the invention of writing and the wheel, and the emergence of civilizations. Our tools became more and more sophisticated, languages appeared, leading to the diverse cultures and societies seen today. So, why have we stopped evolving? The truth is, we haven't. Human evolution is an ongoing process, although it's not as dramatic as it used to be. We adapt to different environments, have different skin tones, appearances, body sizes, and genetic mutations that have influenced traits like lactose intolerance or resistance to certain diseases. But the world we live in today is very different from the one our ancestors inhabited. We don't suffer as much because we've developed technology, culture, and social systems. Thanks to this, evolution slowed down, seeing that we're doing okay as we are now. What we started experiencing is cultural evolution rather than a physical one. plus 200,000 years is a pretty short time period, considering the time span of the universe or even of our Earth. We should see what happens to us in hundreds of thousands of years. I won't be around then, but there are some theories about that. There's a big idea that, in the future, humans and machines might merge into one super being. We call it technological singularity, a state where we humans lead our technologies to the point where we won't be able to control their development anymore. For example, if AI gets so advanced, it will change everything about how we live. Despite the current rise of AI, we shouldn't be too worried about it taking over the world, at least not in the next few decades. All we've developed now is weak artificial intelligence, little simulations. They might look scary to those who don't know much about AI, but the truth is, they have yet far to go before they reach the grand complexity of the human brain, not to mention consciousness. However, many people believe it's only a matter of time before AI reaches this level of intelligence, and then our world might change forever. There are other possibilities too. For example, one day we might reach a level where we merge with machines and learn to upload our consciousness in the cloud. In that case, we might become a hive mind, taking over the internet using our brains, becoming one giant consciousness. No matter what happens in the future, one thing's certain: technology is changing fast, and it's going to affect all of us sooner or later.
Imagine that one day, poof, all the big, furry, and feathered creatures just vanish into thin air. Humans disappear as well, and now there's nothing left but microbes. What would happen to Earth? How long would it take for complex creatures to appear again? And what would they be like? Alright, welcome to the microbial world. Microbes are the tiniest building blocks of life, so small you can't even see them without a microscope. In this amazing world, there are three main groups of microbes: bacteria, archaea, and the single-celled organisms. Bacteria are everywhere, from the air you breathe to the food you eat. Some bacteria are good buddies, helping us digest our food, and even making yogurt taste yummy. But some of them can be mischievous and cause infections. Archaea are the tough explorers of our microscopic universe. Archaea are the daredevils of microbes, and they showed us that life can survive in the craziest conditions. For example, they can thrive in super hot springs, even in incredibly scorching temperatures. Some of them are even capable of living in volcanoes. They also feel pretty fine in the freezing cold. Certain bacteria can get busy even in icy places like the Arctic and Antarctica. There, they help break down things like old plants and animals that got frozen in time. They work as nature's cleanup crew, turning leftovers into useful bits. Or imagine the darkest depths of the ocean where sunlight can't reach. And who do we meet down there? Microbes again, who make food from all the weird chemicals in the water. And of course, they also live inside you. You're a walking microbe party. Your gut alone is a cozy home to trillions of bacteria that help you digest food and stay healthy. And finally, the single-celled organisms. They can be plant-like, making their own food through photosynthesis, or animal-like, hunting for their next tiny meal. Some single-celled organisms can even team up to form colonies that work together and build complex structures. All these microbes are the foundation of life. At first, there were nothing but microbes on Earth. They were just hanging out and enjoying the simple life. But time kept ticking, and the more years passed, the more they evolved. They changed a little, sometimes acquiring some special abilities and passing these abilities on to their children. Generations come and go, and those changes keep adding up. Microbes became more and more complex. And after billions of years and trillions of changes, they become something as amazing as the animals, plants, and people we see on Earth today. It was a very long and tedious process, so let's try to repeat it now. Like, what if all living organisms on our modern Earth, except for the first microbes, would disappear? Without the hustle and bustle of life, the world would become eerily quiet. Streets that were once filled with people and animals would now be empty and peaceful. Buildings and cities would stand alone like silent monuments to the vanished world. First, we would have a huge disruption of food chains. Without plants, herbivores, and carnivores, the intricate food chains and webs that sustain life would simply collapse. Our world wouldn't be as wild and vibrant. The tiny microbes are cool, but they can't recreate the same big, bustling party that we all love. Also, remember how we mentioned that microbes often eat the leftovers of animals and other organisms? Just like when you eat cake and turn it into energy, they turn these bits into nutrients that the Earth loves. But now, without the big animals and plants, there wouldn't be as much leftover cake. The microbes would still work hard, but their evolution would be really slowed down. Now, you might think that without plants, we wouldn't have any more oxygen. But this isn't entirely true. In fact, trees produce only about 20 to 30% of the oxygen on Earth. So who really helps us breathe? Plankton from SpongeBob. But seriously, ocean plankton, especially phytoplankton, which is responsible for around 80% of Earth's oxygen production. Phytoplankton are considered microorganisms. They're tiny, single-celled or colonial organisms that float around in the oceans, harnessing sunlight. So, if all land plants and animals disappeared, oceanic plankton would still continue to produce oxygen in the oceans through photosynthesis. They would become even more essential for maintaining a breathable atmosphere. Although now these guys would face some big challenges. You see, big animals like whales and fish usually provide nutrients to the ocean. These nutrients are plant food that phytoplankton need to grow and thrive. Without the big animals, there might be fewer of these special nutrients around. The phytoplankton might not grow as well. And since these guys act as the bottom of the ocean food chain, that could have a domino effect on the whole ocean food web. And also, with fewer plants, there's less oxygen being made, and carbon dioxide starts to stick around more. The balance of gases in the air would change a bit, and when the balance tips, it can affect the weather. The Earth's temperature and the way wind moves would change too. Plus, too much carbon dioxide can make the air feel a bit stuffy. Next, animals like moles, ants, and worms as nature's engineers. They're digging tunnels, burrows, and homes in the ground. When these animals dig and move around, they're actually helping the soil. They mix it up and create pathways for air and water to travel through. It's like they're giving the soil a good shake to keep it healthy. So without the animal engineers, the soil might get a bit packed and tight. Water from rain wouldn't be able to seep in as easily. When they're gone, the nutrients aren't getting spread around as much, and the soil might miss its tasty treats. So the whole ecosystem underground could become less cozy and more cramped. But the most interesting question is, what would happen to all our human artifacts? People disappeared, but their builds remained. Let's look at how this could affect the development of microbes on Earth. Our human-made things need proper care. So, if there were no more people around, all these things would be destroyed very fast. Microbes can grow on surfaces, and over time, they would start to cover buildings, streets, and structures. It might not be visible right away, but given enough time, you'd see a thin layer of microbial growth. Nature is a powerful thing. Buildings that were once shielded by human maintenance would now be exposed to the elements. Wind, rain, sun, and snow would all destroy and break down everything we've ever created. And some places on Earth have really tough weather, super hot summers, freezing winters, or crazy storms. In these areas, buildings and cities might even get sadder faster. Microbes would contribute to this too, as some of them produce acids that can break down materials. Slowly, cracks might appear, and materials like concrete and wood might weaken. Humans overestimate their power when they call themselves kings of nature. If we disappeared, in just a couple of thousand years, there would be almost no traces of human civilization left. It would be like we never even existed. But in any case, this event would offer an exciting opportunity for microbes to evolve in a completely new way. With the spotlight all to themselves, they're free to explore and adapt to their surroundings. Some places might become more challenging, while others might become easier to conquer. Microbes reproduce quickly, sometimes in just a matter of minutes. This rapid evolution could lead to a burst of new microbial species. Could microbes rehabitate the planet? Absolutely. Over time, new species of animals and plants would begin to appear. Like the butterfly effect, any small changes would have led to completely new types of life, and perhaps to new types of humans. In any case, these rapidly evolving microbes could reshape the way ecosystems work. They'd interact with each other in new ways, creating intricate relationships and cycles. The balance of life on Earth might be very different from what we know today. What would it look like? Let's leave that to your imagination. In 1925, magazine publisher Hugo Gernsback created the Isolator, a bizarre-looking helmet for people who need to concentrate properly. Its first version was made using wood and felt. But Gernsback wasn't satisfied since it didn't block all the external sounds as well as he had hoped. Then, he redesigned the device, removing the wood and adding glass so users could see through it. But a problem emerged. The helmet could only be worn for about 15 minutes at a time before the user became drowsy. 38 years later, Gernsback presented the Tell-Eye glasses, a handy, pocket-sized portable TV set. You might find them funny-looking, but to be honest, today's VR goggles are only slightly less geeky. The Tell-Eye glasses weighed about 5 ounces and were built around small cathode ray tubes that ran on low-voltage current from tiny batteries. The device had a separate screen for each eye, which meant it could display stereoscopic images, working pretty much like 3D glasses. Gernsback promised that users faced no danger of being electrocuted, but, well, people didn't take his word for granted. Meet the beauty micrometer, also known as the beauty calibrator. This 1930s technology definitely looks like a clockwork orange device, but it was actually designed to enhance people's beauty. The specialist placed this thing around a person's head, and the flexible metal strips helped calculate facial measurements with great precision. The inventor was particularly focused on 2 measurements. The heights of the nose and forehead should be the same, and the eyes should be separated by the width of one eye. If the beauty micrometer spotted an imperfection, they suggested using makeup to correct the situation. So this device was supposed to be a big deal for actresses and actors working in the movie industry, but it was a flop. And it definitely didn't become a nationwide craze. Sheet masks are all about aesthetics nowadays, but they were way more bizarre looking in the past. Take this ice mask created in the 40s by the legendary Max Factor Jr., who basically invented makeup for movie stars. He hoped that actresses would go to great lengths to get a mask like this to reduce facial puffiness, but that really never happened. Some people find those dimples around a smile to be the most charming and attractive thing ever. So, an inventor came up with the Dimple Maker back in 1936, which basically looks like some medieval dental equipment. The instructions were pretty simple. The user should stand in front of a mirror, smile to position the Dimple Maker correctly, and wear it 2 or 3 times a day for 5 minutes each time. The idea was to repeat the process until dimples appeared. But no surprises here, the thing couldn't really make dimples look better or create new ones. In fact, the Medical Association even stated that this device could bring you serious health issues instead of conventional beauty. Even the most experienced men can injure themselves by shaving from time to time. So, probably only the bravest would pay to use this mass shaving machine, which allowed barbers to shave a dozen men simultaneously. This device appeared in a pilot for a TV series in the 60s, but it was invented in the 19th century. Still, the commercial success was never meant to happen, as this machine would simply never adapt to different face shapes. Another dangerous invention was the shoe-fitting fluoroscope. When shopping for shoes, instead of the usual try-on routine, people would step onto this cool machine that uses X-rays to show a real-time moving image of your feet inside the shoes. It's like a high-tech way to make sure your kicks fit just right. It sounds pretty cool, but these machines were actually dangerous since they were blasting out a crazy amount of radiation. I mean, during a quick 20-second view, you'd get a dose way above safe levels. Even though the radiation was aimed at people's feet, a bunch of it would scatter around, exposing everyone nearby. So, salespeople who spent hours around these things were getting a whole year's worth of radiation in just 2 hours. There were reports of injuries, so this invention was finally banned in the 70s. If you've got 2 left feet, you can learn how to dance with YouTube videos, or call your partner to help you out by using these Siamese dancing shoes. This invention made its debut in a 1981 mail-order catalog, intending to help couples stay in sync on the dance floor. But they were more likely to have you both tripping to the ground. Let me introduce you to the auto skates, an invention dating back to the 40s. The inventor used to kickstart the motorized roller skates as if firing up a lawnmower, and they could run up to 160 miles on a single gallon. But they had a little issue with the brakes, which could not brake at all. So, a co-pilot was necessary there. And by co-pilot, I mean someone brave enough to chill on a little stool behind the driver and help brake using their own feet. If someone needed to take their whole family for a spin, they could just hop on the Goofy bike. This invention, unveiled in Chicago in 1939, was a bike for 4 people that also doubled as a mobile sewing station. When this quirky ride was parked, the sewing machine's legs kept the tall cycle from toppling over. But I wouldn't be so close to it, just in case. The auto skates and the Goofy bike seem like relatively safe ways to get around compared to a barrel. In 1901, a schoolteacher named Annie Edson Taylor celebrated her 63rd birthday by taking a journey down Niagara Falls inside a 5-foot-high wooden pickle barrel. Following her daring feat, 15 copycats tried using the same device to conquer Niagara Falls, but not all of them succeeded. Nowadays, attempting such stunts is prohibited due to the significant risks involved, and the fine is approximately $10,000. Back in 1929, someone apparently thought that wood veneer sheets could be the next big thing in bathing suit materials. They were advertising a kind of DIY and recycling method, and one of the promotional videos featured a girl explaining how she crafted her outfit using leftover veneer from building a house. The funny thing is that they even claimed that, so far, none of the bathing suits had warped or cracked. But let's be real, the wood would need some serious waterproofing to pass the test of time. This invention didn't stick around for too long, probably because they didn't exactly win any awards for the most flattering design. About 10 years later, men were seen rocking periscope top hats in London. This clever invention gave short people a slight boost to peek over heads in large crowds. The images bounced from a mirror at the top of the hat down to another mirror right in front of the eyes through a hole in the brim. But while they seemed a great idea for parades and sporting events, they simply weren't practical in any other situation. Whether you're feeling lazy or tired, there's really no excuse to skip your piano practice, all thanks to this 1935 invention, the foldable piano. The instrument sits at the foot of the bed, and the keyboard can be pulled out like a drawer, bent over on hinges until it's at the right angle for the player's hands. Is it safe though? All it takes is the piano not being totally secure, and bam! A disaster is about to happen. Let's say the well-being of kids wasn't exactly a top concern for the minds behind the Mercury maze. This 1978 invention was a handheld game where kids were supposed to rotate it and tilt the puzzle to guide a silver blob of mercury along a path to the center of the maze. Yes, we're referring to the toxic and health hazardous mercury in a kid's toy. What could possibly go wrong?
What if 99% of humanity disappeared? First off, we're talking about a massive reduction in people, leaving only 80 million humans on the entire planet. But hey, don't panic just yet. let's see how this wild ride would unfold. Imagine bustling cities turned into ghost towns, empty highways and quiet neighborhoods. It'd be like a never-ending vacation for those left behind. Of course, there'd be some challenges to tackle, like whoops, untended gas mains causing fires, and those abandoned chemical storage facilities and industrial plants might create some pollution. Oh, and let's not forget about abandoned nuclear power plants. Wild animals would be more free, and poor domestic cattle and sheep would struggle in cold northern climates. To make things worse, stored gasoline wouldn't last long because it's not so great at staying stable. Let's get to the silver lining. With only 80 million people, there would be plenty of resources. Organizing and salvaging whatever's left would be totally doable, especially in smaller countries like Belgium. They'd probably have a, "Hey, we got this" attitude. They'd have just around 120,000 folks left, all within a couple of hours' drive from each other. That is, of course, if this remaining 1% of the world's population is scattered around the planet equally based on countries' populations before this event happened. In this case, pretty much every nation would face a similar situation. Imagine South Korea with 500,000 people, mostly hanging out together. Brazil would have 2 million inhabitants chilling out along the Atlantic coast. Hopefully, unlike those movies where post-apocalyptic gangs go mad, the survivors would try to stick together in their old communities. These resourceful fellas would band together in new family and village communities, and they'd have the knowledge and skills to handle any troublemakers. Remember, we're social creatures, and we'd want to stick together to face the unknown. Well, at least we wouldn't have to start from scratch here. We'd have a major advantage. All the knowledge accumulated by humanity would still be with us. If we had electricity and internet available, we would be okay. So, would we re-industrialize? Yeah, we would. We'd have tools and machines still lying around, giving us a head start. Sure, renewable energy might be tricky at first, and we might have to rely on fossil fuels like coal, but we're resourceful, and we'd find a way to make it work. Plus, we'd have some brilliant minds with critical skills who'd step up to the challenge. This type of stuff kind of happened in real life. Think of the historical collapse events. They made an epic comeback that spanned centuries. Back in the 14th century, a plague struck and claimed the lives of up to half of all Europeans. The Middle East was also impacted, with around 1/10 of the global population succumbing to the disease. Surprisingly, this devastating event had little negative impact on Europe's technological and economic progress. And 2 centuries later, the population eventually rebounded to how it was before. 2 other instances of collapse are that of Rome in the Bronze Age. Both brought down impressive civilizations that had enjoyed technological advancements and economic prosperity and engaged in international trade. The Bronze Age collapse occurred between 1200 and 1150 BCE, leading to the fall of Mycenaean, Mycenaean Greece and Hittite civilizations, and the weakening of Egyptian and Assyrian civilizations. To this day, historians remain uncertain about the exact reasons behind this collapse. Rome, once boasting over 1 million inhabitants and serving as the seat of the Western Roman Empire for centuries, faced a dramatic decline in the 5th century. Within a few decades, the entire empire collapsed. It took until the 1930s for Rome to surpass its previous peak population. Fortunately, there are no historical examples of collapse events that resulted in more than 20% of the global population's demise. Many aspects of our physical infrastructure, such as machines, tools, and buildings, would still be intact and usable, placing us in a far better position than in 2500 BCE. The remaining 80 million survivors would have access to the wealth of knowledge accumulated by humanity. Moreover, some individuals might hold critical professions like engineers or chemists. It's quite likely that some people would have agricultural knowledge, helping feed the population. Okay, but let's make this scenario more personal. If you woke up one day to find 99% of the population missing, it would undoubtedly be an overwhelming and surreal experience. Survival would become your immediate priority, and your actions would largely depend on the resources and skills available to you. Here's what you would probably do. You'd take a moment to comprehend what's happened. This sudden disappearance of people would be shocking and confusing. Your friends and family would most probably be gone too, like it happened in Avengers. Your primary focus would be securing essential survival items, such as food, water, shelter, and medical supplies. You'd need to visit nearby grocery stores, pharmacies, and warehouses to gather provisions that could last for an extended period. Then you'd need to find other survivors. I mean, many people now lack essential skills like growing food, purifying water, or self-defense. You'd need to start learning them if there was no internet and no YouTube tutorials to rely on. Well, libraries, museums, and educational institutions have tons of information about the world and its history. Once you formed a community, you and your fellas would have to protect it like there's no tomorrow. You might feel like there isn't one at that point anyway. While most technology might still work initially, you'd need to ensure the protection of power sources. To do that, you'd have to be very cautious. The world would be in turmoil, so you'd need to remain vigilant and cautious of potential dangers. Without proper law enforcement and governance, there could be risks from wild animals, natural disasters, or even other survivors who might be hostile. Now let's explore the best and worst case scenarios. The sudden disappearance of so many people would create widespread chaos, leading to mass accidents and damage. With the absence of healthcare professionals and medical supplies, diseases could spread, leading to health crises. Food production and distribution systems would collapse, and food shortages and famine could become a real possibility. Looting and violence could occur since desperate people would search for resources and try to survive. The best case scenario is that after all this chaos, survivors would eventually come together to support one another and form resilient communities. The world would have significantly fewer carbon emissions, leading to a positive impact on the environment. With a small population, resources like food and water might be more abundant and sustainable in the long run. Without the constraints of a highly populated world, people could focus on individual passions, arts, and creativity. With advanced technology still available, survivors might start working on preserving knowledge and advancing scientific research. But overall, the world would change drastically, and the future would be uncertain. Your actions and the actions of other survivors would play a crucial role in shaping the new world and determining its trajectory. Feeling like a fishing pro? Head to the nearest water body and try your luck at reeling in some aquatic treats. Now, here's an idea. Become a green thumb superstar. Plant those seeds, nurture your crops, and watch your mini farm flourish. Farm-to-table cuisine, anyone? And how about those furry friends? If you spot any wandering pets, befriend them, and you've got yourself some loyal companions. Now take a deep breath, chin up, and embrace your inner survival guru. Remember, this might be a wild ride, but you've got the spirit and the skills to thrive in this post-apocalyptic feast of life. So go out there. Have you heard of Gobekli Tepe? It's an ancient site in Turkey that literally made historians rewrite history books. Over 11,000 years ago, a group of prehistoric humans crafted an enigmatic masterpiece that's even older than Stonehenge. Before its discovery, archaeologists believed that people didn't know about iron and weren't good at making pottery. They were sure that settled life only emerged with the need for agriculture. But Gobekli Tepe changed this belief. The place has revealed that it was the temple that paved the way for a settled life, not agriculture. Until this discovery, researchers believed that farming was the catalyst for sedentary living. Meet Professor Schmidt, the guy whose findings changed this theory. He managed to prove that hunter-gatherer communities laid the very foundations of this way of life. Back in the 1960s, other archaeologists visited the area, but they totally missed the mark. While surveying the region, they stumbled upon a hill with scattered limestone slabs and concluded it was just an old burial ground from medieval times. Little did they know that there was so much more to uncover. In 1994, Schmidt embarked on his own survey of prehistoric sites in the area. Surprise! he instantly realized he had discovered something truly extraordinary. Unlike the nearby flat and barren plateaus, Gobekli Tepe had a gently rounded top, rising 50 feet above the surrounding landscape. Funny enough, the translation of this place's name is Potbelly Hill. Schmidt was sure only humans could have made something like this. Those broken limestone pieces that were mistaken for gravestones turned out to be way more exciting. It was like stumbling upon a hidden treasure. The pieces took on a whole new meaning, and Schmidt with his team was about to dive into the secrets waiting beneath the surface. To their surprise, they found no traces of a settlement. No hearths for cooking, no houses, and none of those adorable clay figurines commonly found in nearby sites of similar age. However, they uncovered that those ancient people used tools like stone hammers. So, Schmidt and his team put their heads together and took a wild guess at the age of Gobekli Tepe's stone structures. Their estimation got backed up by some limited carbon dating done right at the site. The ancient vibes of this place were finally starting to make sense. It was like a puzzle slowly coming together. You may think that back then, people didn't have special tools to create something as cool as Gobekli Tepe. Not true. Turns out, these prehistoric folks used flint tools instead of fancy metal chisels. They were also skilled at chipping away softer limestone and crafting pillars right on the spot. Afterward, they carried the pillars a short distance to the summit and placed them upright. Once the stone rings were complete, they covered them with layers of dirt. Over time, they added new rings, and voila! You've got a cool hill to impress people in the future. During their first year of excavation, the team went through 15,000 pieces of animal bones from wild creatures. These people didn't have pet animals or grow their own food. They hunted wild animals for their meals. But things were about to change, because the place had everything they needed to start farming. Scientists say they had wild sheep and wild grains that could be domesticated. And guess what? Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated strains of wheat at a prehistoric village. These amazing findings have completely changed how we view civilization. In the past, experts believed that people needed to learn how to farm and settle in one place before they could build temples and develop complex societies. But guess what? Schmidt's research flips that idea on its head. He claims that the incredible effort put into constructing these astonishing structures actually set the stage for the development of advanced societies. It means that societal and cultural changes happened before agriculture. Schmidt has this fascinating hypothesis about Gobekli Tepe. He thinks it could have been a special burial site where people left their loved ones. And here's the twist. The burial site was adorned with fancy statues and symbols representing deities from the spiritual realm. The idea that Gobekli Tepe could have served as a sacred place adds another layer of complexity to the whole story. While the site's true purpose may remain elusive, Schmidt's insights invite us to consider the profound interplay between life and the afterlife, and the deep reverence ancient hunter-gatherer societies may have had for their departed ancestors. Now let's talk about the stars of the show, the mesmerizing T-shaped columns that dominate Gobekli Tepe. These mysterious structures range from 10 to 20 feet tall and most likely represent stylized human figures. But one figure stands out from the rest, the three-dimensional lion relief. This depiction really fires up our imagination. Why? Because it hints at the possibility that lions roamed Anatolia during the Neolithic period. These standing stones are arranged in circles and placed in rectangular pits. Each circle has a similar setup. Two big T-shaped pillars in the center, surrounded by slightly smaller ones facing inward. Talk about a stylish arrangement. These towering pillars reach a whopping 16 feet and weigh between 7 and 10 tons. Some pillars are plain and simple, while others are like works of art with intricate carvings. Foxes, scorpions, and vultures come to life, crawling and twisting on the pillars' sides. But it's not just animals depicted on these stones. Some pillars have abstract shapes representing humans, and even small carvings of clothing items. Some of them even have belts. Now, there's one pillar that stands out from the rest like a rock star. This super old stone pillar suggests that a comet crashed into Earth. It happened during a chilly period that lasted about 1,000 years. Previous studies examining Greenland ice cores hinted at this comet theory, but now the carvings at Gobekli Tepe prove it right. The carvings on the pillars are like a historical comic strip. They even show a headless human figure. Researchers fed the images into a computer and discovered their connections to constellations, indicating that this temple might have been an ancient observatory. It's like our ancestors were trying to document this cataclysmic event in their own unique way. Archaeologists have been excavating and researching Gobekli Tepe since the mid-1990s, peeling back layers of history and providing us with a deeper understanding of the intricate relationship between various elements. They have no plans to stop the whole process for another 150 years. Who knows what else they'll find? You see, Gobekli Tepe has been labeled purely as a ritual site with no signs of domestic activities. We were led to believe that the absence of water meant it couldn't support semi-sedentary communities. But scientists believe it's time to shake things up and approach Gobekli Tepe with fresh eyes. It's time to question what we believed before and use new evidence and different ways of thinking. Like, there might have been a group of people living in the area who didn't stay in one place all the time. They moved around a bit but still had their own civilization, living in the area semi-sedentarily. Gobekli Tepe is not just home to a single temple, but an astounding collection of over 20 ancient structures. As archaeologists delve into the depths of this wonder, they are unraveling its unique layout, featuring two prominent focal points at the heart of each establishment, complemented by smaller structures and dividing walls. What's even crazier is that in this area, there are over 200 obelisks, which are narrow tapering monuments.
You know these before and after makeovers? Well, if you saw a pic of an average human who lived about 1 million years ago compared to a pic of an average human who lives today, you'd be astonished. And get this, it's a makeover performed by Mother Nature. Like back in the day, the earliest human species were basically tiny with long arms and short legs. They needed a big digestive tract to handle all those plants they were chowing down on, and their rib cages were super wide to make room for all the organs breaking down their food. Time went by and some of these humans started adapting to hot climates, and they all got narrow and leggy to stay cool. They started eating meat and other quick-to-digest foods, which meant they could have smaller digestive tracts and use more energy for their tall bodies and big brains. And when humans spread to colder climates, they evolved short, wide bodies to conserve heat, but they still loved their raw meat and cooked food, which could be easily processed in a short digestive tract. Check out this skeleton of an 8 to 9-year-old Homo erectus kid from East Africa. He was already 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 106 pounds. If he had grown up, he could have been almost 6 feet tall. His lean body was perfect for hot, dry environments. And then there were the Neanderthals, who were only about 5 foot 4 inches tall on average. They had short, broad bodies that were great for dealing with winter cold and even ice ages. Junk food is bad for our teeth, but did you know that it can also cause dental crowding? Back in the day, our ancestors had straight teeth with wisdom teeth. But thanks to processed diets and milling technologies, our jaws have shrunk and our teeth are now vying for limited space. So, if you want to avoid a mouthful of crooked teeth, stick to a less processed diet. As humans spread out and adapted to different environments, they changed their body shapes to survive. And as diets changed, so did bodies. But one thing's for sure, early humans were super active, with thicker and stronger bones than we have today. Nowadays, we're evolving sleeker and weaker bones thanks to our less physically demanding lifestyles. Yeah, it's cool to see how much we changed over time. Humans were cool back in the day, but they're probably even cooler now. You may not know it, but your bones are like supermodels. They're designed to be used all the time, and they look pretty good too. But guess what's even stronger? Your teeth. When you bite down, your teeth can exert a whopping 5,600 pounds of pressure per square inch. That's some serious chomping power. Speaking of bones, did you know that they're made up of water? Yep, about 25% of your bone mass is actually H2O. And here's another fun fact. Your eyes are like car engines. They need fluids to function properly, just like an engine needs gasoline. So when you blink up to 20,000 times a day, you're basically giving your eyes a windshield wash. Have you ever blushed and felt your cheeks turn red? Well, did you know that your stomach lining can blush too? When you blush, there's an increased blood flow in your body, and that includes your stomach lining. It turns red because it has plenty of blood vessels, and when there's more blood than usual, it shows. Now, we all know that plastic is bad for the environment, but did you know that we can actually digest it in tiny quantities? However, our digestive system can't handle grass. Grazing animals have special teeth and several stomachs to process raw leaves and grass, while we're stuck with just one stomach. We all have two super fast muscles that control our eyelids closing. They're actually the fastest muscles in our body, and they shut our eyes within a mere 0.1 second when triggered. And while we still don't know why we blink, we do know that women blink more often than men, and that we tend to blink in unison when watching a movie with friends. Maybe it's just a weird human thing. You flex that strong handshake and think it's all 'cause of your gym grind? Ha! Turns out your pinky finger is the real MVP. No joke. Believe it or not, that little finger packs a punch and is responsible for 50% of your hand strength. Who knew the underdog could be such a powerhouse? Your toes are like two little homies that carry almost half of your body weight. And don't even listen to people who say you don't need them. Your toes are the most important guys when it comes to walking and pushing you forward. Our hair color is easily explained by genes. There are not more than 2% of people with natural red hair. They're followed by blondes, about 3%, and by all the varieties of brown shades, only about 11%. The vast majority goes to black hair, including very dark brown. Who knew that nails had a secret talent besides helping us pick up tiny objects and peel off stickers? They also give us a structure to press against so we know how firmly to hold anything. Talk about multi-talented. Move over, Rapunzel. It's not just our hair and nails that can grow. Our liver can regenerate itself from just 51% of its original size back to full size. But don't go damaging it too much, or you'll end up with scars. Did you know that the skin is the largest organ in our body? It makes up a whopping 15% of our total body weight. And if you shed more than your fluffy cat Snowball, don't worry, it's normal. We lose up to 9 pounds of skin cells every year. Gross, but fascinating. Who would have thought that tomatoes have more genes than humans? But don't worry, it's not the number of genes that matters. It's how they all work together. So go ahead and enjoy that tomato sauce on your pizza. Hold your nose the next time you eat and see how much your taste buds fade. It turns out that the nose is actually responsible for 75 to 95% of our taste perception. So don't underestimate the power of those sniffers. Keep your mouth hydrated or your taste buds won't work properly. Saliva triggers chemical reactions with enzymes that break down the food as soon as it enters your mouth. So drink up and savor those flavors. Forget about distinguishing between 10,000 smells. Recent research shows that we can actually differentiate between over 1 trillion smells. And not only that, but smells can evoke some distant memories too. So next time you catch a whiff of something familiar, take a moment to reminisce. When you're snoozing away, your sense of smell goes on vacation too. So even if your room smells like a dumpster fire, you won't even notice it. Sweet dreams, right? And speaking of dreams, Did you ever wonder why some of them are in black and white, while others are like a rainbow explosion? Well, apparently it all depends on the TV you watched as a kid. So I guess your grandparents had some pretty boring dreams, huh? Now let's talk about listening to your heart. Not only is it a great metaphor for following your dreams, but it can also give you away if you're lying. Yeah, your heart rate starts racing like Usain Bolt when you're fibbing. Okay, brace yourself for this one. Even if you brush your teeth like a champ and use mouthwash like it's going out of style, your mouth is still a germ hotspot. Gross, right? But don't worry, most of those bacteria are actually good for us and keep the bad stuff away. But wait, there's more. The belly button is actually the second dirtiest place on our bodies. Yeah, I know, who knew? Since we don't really use it after we're born, it becomes a breeding ground for all kinds of icky stuff. It's got over 2,300 bacterial species living in there. So maybe it's time to give our belly button some extra TLC.
The human body is this perfectly balanced machine, right? Well, not when I'm using it. Normally, all its parts work seamlessly together to keep us thriving and, well, alive. Each of our organs is essential for our day-to-day activities, from breathing, walking, talking, and coming up with bright ideas that push humanity forward. But are they really essential? Do we really need all those body parts? Or are some of them just ancient relics that we just got stuck with in this weird game of evolution? Take wisdom teeth, for example. Nah, somebody already took mine. Yeah, they're those pairs of teeth stuck in the back of your mouth you often have to go to the dentist for. They're also known as third molars, and while they can be used to chew food, a lot of people think they're just unnecessary. And get this, around 22% of people worldwide don't even have all four of them. When they do grow in, they're the most likely to become impacted, which means they get stuck in the jawbone sideways and can't properly come through the gums. It's all because our jaws are often too small to accommodate these extra guys. Some smart scientists think that's because we've evolved to have smaller jaws over time. Recent evidence also shows that what we eat as kids might also be to blame, but it's hard to know for sure. Apparently, munching on hard-to-chew foods like raw veggies and nuts can actually stimulate jaw growth, while eating soft processed foods can kinda stunt it. And that leaves little space for our back teeth to come in and, do their thing. Will they disappear altogether in the future? I guess we human mammals will just have to wait and see. Now let's talk about the vomeral nasal organ, or as I like to call it, the nose's secret instrument. Ooh. You see, rodents and other mammals have this awesome ability to communicate with each other using chemical signals called pheromones. And guess what? They have a special organ called the vomeral nasal organ, or VNO, that helps them detect these pheromones. Here's where it gets interesting. While most adult humans have something resembling a VNO in their nose, it turns out that it's basically a useless remnant. Neuroscientists even say that if you look at the anatomy of this organ, you won't see any cells that resemble those of similar organs from other mammals. Also, this organ in humans doesn't seem to be communicating with the brain either. Now, it's not all bad news. Even though the human VNO is pretty useless, it looks like it still might respond to some pheromones. Will humans keep this organ on their evolutionary to-do list? For now, I'd place it in the maybe pile. Now, here's a tail. Animals that feature tails need these structures for a lot of things. Some need it for balance, others for navigation, while some need it to attract potential partners. But did you know that when we're just a few weeks old in our mother's belly, we actually have tails too? That's right, we have a whole little tail complete with vertebrae. As we develop, that tail magically disappears and we're left with our trusty tailbone. Humans and apes are unique in that we don't have tails, unlike other primates. It's a mystery why apes lost their tails, but we can all agree that it makes us stand out in a crowd. However, once in a blue moon, a human is born with a little vestigial tail. Cute, right? Well, don't get too excited, because these tails don't have vertebrae and can sometimes be associated with a tricky condition of the spine. Either way, these tails are usually harmless and can be easily removed with a quick surgery. And let's be honest, it's not like we're going to miss it. After all, who needs a tail when you have arms and legs to get around? Plus, can you imagine trying to find pants that fit with a tail sticking out the back? Not a good look. There's little to no chance humans will end up needing tails in the future, so I'm guessing the tailbones are bye-bye in future generations. Humans also have a funny little fold of membrane in the inner corner of the eyes, called the plica semilunaris. It's basically what's left of a third eyelid, which is still found in some animals, like gorillas and other primates. But here's the funny thing. Even our close relatives, the chimpanzees, have this little fold that appears to be useless too. So we're not alone in this eye quirkiness. Speaking of unusual membranes, they serve a variety of functions in different animals, such as protecting the eye from dirt and moisture, or hiding the iris from predators. Some species can even see through their transparent membranes when they're underwater or underground. Now, the reasons why we humans lost our third eyelid is still a bit of a mystery. Maybe changes in our habitat and eye physiology made it unnecessary, or maybe we just evolved to be too cool for a third eyelid. Who knows? With or without vestigial organs, it's interesting to imagine what humans might look like in the future. Many organs have become obsolete because of our lifestyle changes. Care to have a peek into what we might look like in the future? And in the same vein, or artery, have you heard of the concept of text claw? It's where you spend so much time typing on your phone or laptop that your hand starts to cramp up like a claw. And that's just one of the physical changes that could happen to us if we don't take care of our bodies in this tech-heavy world. But it's not just our hands that are affected. We could end up with 90-degree elbows from constantly holding our devices at that angle, and even a smaller brain from all the distractions and information overload. Now, I know what you're thinking. We just can't give up technology and go back to the Stone Age. And you're right, we don't have to. But we do need to be aware of the potential negative effects and take steps to reduce their damage. That's why a team of designers put their creative efforts together to present Mindy, a future human whose body has physically changed due to the constant and never-ending use of smartphones, laptops, and other types of maniacal devices. While Mindy's exaggerated changes may not be in our future, the concerns behind them are real. So, what can we do? Well, one suggestion is to take regular breaks from our screens and stretch our legs a little. Maybe even encourage some office yoga or dance parties to get the blood flowing. We don't have to give up technology completely, but we do need to be mindful of its effects on our bodies and minds. Many years in the future, we might even get smaller in size. One scientist reckons that if we were smaller, our bodies would need less energy, which would come in super handy in our increasingly crowded planet. It's funny to think about how different our lives are now compared to when we were hunter-gatherers. Back then, we only had to interact with a handful of people each day. But now, remembering people's names is a super important trait, and it might even be something we grow to become better at. Or, technology might actually play a role in our evolution. Scientists believe that we could one day have implants in our brains that help us remember people's names. It's like having a biological phone book directly in your body. Wouldn't that be cool? Who knows? Maybe in the future, we'll even have visible technology as part of our appearance. Imagine having an artificial eye that can see different colors and visuals. And don't even get me started on what we might look like if we colonize Mars. With the lower gravity, our bodies could change in all sorts of ways. We might have longer arms and legs, or even insulating body hair like our Neanderthal ancestors. It's hard to pinpoint what we might look like in the future without very precise data to back the models up. But it's fair to say these changes will be interesting, to say the least. As for me, well, it's too late to say the least. I've said over 1,400 words here already.
Hey there, curious history buffs! Have you heard the legend of the ancient race of giants of Nevada? Yes, I'm talking about actual giants that allegedly lived thousands of years ago. Now I know what you're thinking. Giants, really? Well, archaeological finds add fuel to this debate too. And here's where it gets interesting. Lovelock Cave was indeed used as a burial site, and some of the remains found there are much larger than average human bones. The cave is by the Humboldt Sink in western Nevada. It was once part of an enormous lake, which eventually dried up, leaving a number of smaller ones, including the Humboldt Sink. The cave became the home of the Site-Ka tribe. According to the legend, these red-haired giants were so big that they had to be buried in the cave itself. Indeed, later on, archaeologists discovered 8 to 10 foot tall skeletons. This legend started to unfold when a mining engineer named John T. Reed talked to the locals in 1886. Once Reed saw the cave, he knew he was onto something. The news spread soon, but the cave was attracting another type of attention too. The deposits of a fertilizer known as guano were discovered inside the cave. So a mining company began excavating the precious resource in 1911 and soon shipped more than 250 tons of the fertilizer to San Francisco. Unfortunately, some of the human remains and artifacts were neglected and lost in the mining process. This led to an official excavation in 1912 and 1924. After the top layer of guano had been mined, strange objects started to surface. Around the area, the earliest evidence of human habitation dates back about 4,000 years. The Lovelock culture lasted for some 3,000 years, and they left us with 10,000 stunning artifacts. The pits in the cave were like a series of time capsules hidden at different depths. Archaeologists determined the age of each pit by its depth. It turns out that many different groups used the cave for storage over a really long time, and the things they stored there give us a really cool glimpse into their cultures. It's like a giant ancient storage unit full of hidden treasures. What have the researchers found besides the giant bones, you might ask? Some other bodies were mummified using a method similar to the one applied by ancient Egyptians. These remains also had something in common with the bodies discovered as far south as Lake Titicaca. Both mummies had some red hair. Yet, there are scientists who believe this reddish hue is the result of the interaction with the environment in which the bodies stayed. So, while the story of the red-haired giants may be a wild and intriguing tale, not everyone is convinced. Some experts believe that the bones found in Lovelock Cave are simply the remains of prehistoric animals, like mammoths or sloths. But others insist that there's something more to the story. Other relics, such as finely crafted baskets and exquisite duck decoys made from tule fibers, were also found there. In any case, this cave is worth the attention it gets. By the way, you can still visit this cave today and see the pits of different depths with your own eyes. But let me tell you one thing. It's in a hot, dry, and isolated place. Archaeologists have made another discovery that seems to be straight out of a legend. They think they found the palace of the one and only Odysseus, who was the legendary Greek king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem. Move over, Indiana Jones. We've got some real-life adventure happening here from around 1300 BCE. Apparently, this is the only palace mentioned in Homer's epic poems that hasn't been found. The excavations have been made on the Ionian Islands, and the view from the ruins found on the island of Ithaca are exactly as described in the Odyssey, says the professor who led the excavation team. Known to the ancient Romans as Ulysses, the Greek hero took 10 years to return home to Ithaca after the fall of Troy. For many years, Homer's other epic, called the Iliad, which tells the story of the protracted siege of Troy by the Greeks, was regarded as a myth too. But then, in the 1870s, Troy was rediscovered in modern-day Turkey's Çanakkale city. So, if they found Troy, who's to say they couldn't find Odysseus's home? The researchers were following Homer's words as a roadmap. The excavation site has a building complex with 2 levels. It has important finds, such as storerooms and workshops, a complicated drainage system, and fragments of pottery. It also has a well from the 8th century BCE, which is around the time when Odysseus is believed to have been the king. Yet, not everyone is convinced that the team has actually discovered the home of Odysseus. A British researcher named Robert Biddlestone insists that Homer's description of ancient Ithaca isn't very similar to the island that now has its name, and that Odysseus's kingdom was actually on the Isle of Cephalonia. However, Italian archaeologist Adriano La Regina might have a more realistic approach to this debate. He says that whether this find has a connection to Ulysses or not, what's more important is the discovery of this royal palace. Once upon a time, in a land far away, the Klamath Indians spread a legend about the creation of Crater Lake. Okay, maybe this land is not that far away, and it still exists. You can find it in south central Oregon, in the western United States. Anyway, the legend has it that this lake was formed in a vicious battle between two volcanoes, Mount Mazama and Mount Shasta. Then the spirits of Earth and the Sky, which are Lao, who ruled the below world, and Skell, the chief of the above world, joined the fight. It turned into a geological drama. During the battle, darkness veiled the land. The fight was over when Mount Mazama collapsed and sent Lao back into the underworld. Then the rain filled the pit and created a lake in the place where the mountain had once stood. Flash forward to our time. Scientists have discovered that Mount Mazama did erupt 7,700 years ago. Artifacts found in the area prove that the legend indeed contains some details about the explosion. The tale says that red-hot rocks were flying through the sky. This happened during the volcanic eruption that caused the mountain to collapse. This created the volcanic caldera, which later on got filled with water. What makes this legend came true story unusual is how long it has existed. According to researchers, these types of verbal stories lose their credibility within 600 to 700 years. That's why the legend about the creation of Crater Lake is so unique. So many generations, for hundreds of years, have been accurately passing down the information. This volcanic crater lake is now in a national park. It's famous for its deep blue color. The water in it is extremely clear. If you visit it today, the water you'll see won't be the same as for someone who will visit the place 250 years later. Because there are no rivers flowing into or out of the lake, the existing water evaporates and the lake gets filled again by rain and snowfall. Basically, every 250 years, the water is replaced. Plus, this lake is almost 2,000 feet deep, which makes it the deepest lake in the United States. Swimming is okay in the lake, but there's only one legal and safe trail to get to the shore. There are other activities, such as fishing and boat tours. Shared human experiences, such as birth, marriage, and aging, may explain why certain tales are shared globally. Similar struggles and obstacles faced by humans around the world generate similar themes in traditional stories about love, parenting, and mortality. So, do you have legends or tales you've heard of from your grandparents? Who knows? Maybe your ancestors too witnessed a cool historical event.
The unanswered mysteries surrounding ancient civilizations have been a source of inspiration for many conspiracy theorists. In fact, some of these mysteries are so interesting that many of us either already believe them or would like to. One thing is for sure though, none of those thousands of conspiracy theories have ever been, classified. Or have they? We're all aware that the CIA has done some questionable things throughout history for the sake of national security, but you wouldn't expect a book to be both a national and international threat. The CIA recently declassified parts of a book that talks about lost ancient civilizations and the catastrophic events that made them vanish thousands of years ago. This mysterious book was written in 1963 by a guy named Chan Thomas, and it was going to be published by Emerson House in 1965 until the CIA got involved. For some mysterious reason, They classified the book, and it was never released to the public until recently. But here's where it gets interesting. The book was declassified in 2013 due to the Freedom of Information Act, but it wasn't released to the public until 2016. And what was released truly raises a few questions. The original version of this document was 284 pages long, but the PDF essay that was released was heavily censored, with just 57 pages, which makes it 1/5 of the whole document. The pages were edited before they were released to the public in such a way that you wouldn't even notice that the other pages were missing. Now, no one really knows why this book was classified in the first place, but it has some interesting content from what I've gathered. The author of the book had quite the imagination and a huge love for ancient civilizations. And even though what he had to say is very thought-provoking, some of it is just bizarre. He believes that our planet is locked into a never-ending cycle of pole shifts and Earth crust displacements that are responsible for the mass extinctions of many civilizations which existed more than 6,000 years ago, even before the Sumerians. He believed that these events caused more damage to the Earth than meteors, and he bases this theory on a few artifacts that exist around the world, but weren't really noticed until recently. But I'll get into that in a bit. Those mass extinctions that the book talks about include the end of the Ice Age, when huge 2-mile-thick ice sheets disappeared from northern Europe, Northern America, and Canada, and caused 100 species to go extinct. And here's how the author illustrates his hypothesis. He believes that there was a geomagnetic pole shift which caused catastrophic changes to both the atmosphere and the Earth's crust, resulting in the extinction of many civilizations over time. Now, even though the geomagnetic pole shift is a real thing, it doesn't just happen overnight. It happens really slowly, only about every few 100,000 years, according to scientists. But it's a bit more complicated than it sounds. It is a well-known fact that the North Pole is somewhere above Alaska, and the South Pole is close to the middle of Antarctica. Now, these are the geographic poles, and they'll always be north and south. However, the Earth's magnetic poles flipped a few 100,000 years ago. So if you had a compass, let's say 700,000 years ago, it would instead point south and show you the Antarctic. But the author of the book has a different theory. He believed that the flip of the north and south magnetic poles doesn't happen every few 100,000 years, but every 12,000 years, and that this flip occurs in just a few hours, causing a catastrophic apocalypse. He thinks this happens as a result of an explosion inside the Earth's core. This explosion causes the magnetic poles to flip, but it also causes the Earth's crust to move. According to the book, due to these catastrophic events, a lot of the Earth's continents that were submerged underwater rose above sea level in just a few hours. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The author also states that the Peruvian Andes were beneath the ocean before the last pole shift. And even though it seems far-fetched, since the Andes are approximately 22,000 feet above sea level, there was evidence to support that claim in the late 80s. Scientists found whale bones and fossils that are said to be millions of years old on top of the Andes and the Himalayan mountains. It's also suggested in the book that the deep freeze the Earth went through during the Younger Dryas event caused the Gulf Stream to be disrupted, and he points to some interesting evidence to support that theory. Frozen mammoths were found trapped in blocks of ice with food still in their mouths. Now, this is a true mystery, because freezing cold weather is in their nature, and they were among the few animals that could truly survive in the Ice Age. So, what could have caused them to freeze so quickly? Kinda makes you go, doesn't it? The document describes the Great Pyramid of Giza as a true enigma as well. The Pyramid of Giza is made out of 2.5 million stone blocks that are placed on top of each other with great precision. It's close to 750 feet wide and more than 450 feet high. To this day, we're still not able to explain how it was constructed, and it's quite difficult to understand the internal design as well. On the inside, the pyramid has no similarities to the other pyramids, and, despite popular belief, there were no mummies found in any of them. If you think that's a bit weird, wait for the next one. There are absolutely no hieroglyphs found in any of the pyramids, and that goes both ways. What do I mean? There are also no pyramids, or anything that resembles a pyramid, in any hieroglyphs either. Mr. Thomas believes that the pyramids were created hundreds of thousands of years before the Egyptians by a civilization that went extinct. Speaking of civilizations, in his book he even mentions the Greeks. He claims that in Greece, there was another ancient race of people that went extinct as well. He claims they were extremely tall with blue eyes and blonde hair, and had access to advanced technology that the Greeks couldn't have known about in their prime. Now, before we drift too far away from the stone blocks, let's talk about another mystery, the temple in Baalbek, Lebanon, and its ginormous foundation blocks. Those stones, which make up the Heliopolis, were also used for the temple in Rome. The foundations of the temples are made of 900-ton trilithon stones, and according to the author, this is proof that there must have been a lost ancient civilization with advanced technology. Now, most archaeologists claim that those stones were made by the Romans. However, there's no evidence to support that. The Romans didn't have the technological equipment to make the stones or lift them. So, you might think, what if they just made them in that place right then and there? Well, those stones were also lifted 30 feet high and were placed next to each other with mathematical precision. And let's not forget about the blocks on top of the Heliopolis in Lebanon, which weigh about 800 tons each. But wait till you hear the next one. The Romans don't even credit themselves for these stones. They claim that they built up the sides, but they don't take credit for the extraordinarily large and heavy foundation stones. The author also makes an interesting point about the distance between the Roman capital and Baalbek in Lebanon. Why would the Romans build the world's largest monolithic stones in such a remote area, and so far away from their capital, and never take credit for it? Well, folks, it's a mystery to me. Now, let's move on to the most intriguing enigma, Easter Island, which is located in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, or nowhere, if you will. The author questions how people found it or even settled in such a remote island that long ago. One of the signifiers of Easter Island are the Moai statues, and the mystery surrounding who they depict and why. What's an even bigger question is how they were created, moved, and positioned in the places they were found. According to this declassified document, Easter Island was part of the now lost continent named Mu, and it was sunk in the Pacific Ocean in a disastrous cataclysm that happened during one of those pole shifts. The continent of Mu, according to the book, was as big as South America, and what we now call Easter Island is just what's left of that continent. The author also believes that this is what happened with the lost city of Atlantis as well. Plato is even quoted about this, saying that the whole city of Atlantis sunk miles beneath the waves within just a day. Even though the whole story sounds very intriguing and makes some interesting points, we know that, scientifically speaking, a cataclysmic pole shift causing entire civilizations to go extinct isn't possible.
Here's a young man in a business suit. He's got a secret. He's in the bathroom, standing in front of the mirror, washing his face with cold water to cheer up. There's no one else here besides him, but he's not alone. The guy looks nervous. He slaps his cheeks, looks in the mirror, and says, "Don't worry, we can deal with it. We've been going to this for so long, we will win." He said we, not because he has a split personality. And no, he's not talking to someone else through a small microphone. He said we because he knows a secret. Technically, he's not all human, but a group of billions of living creatures. Him, you, and all the people on Earth aren't really who they think they are. Only 43% of your body is made up of human cells. The remaining 57% are microbes and bacteria. Now this guy is going on stage to tell us this secret. Get on the scales. See the number? Now subtract a little more than half from it. This is your actual weight. Everything else is microscopic organisms. It's hard to believe because, in this case, your body should constantly change its shape, disintegrating into tiny particles. You would see your skin pulsating and continually moving. Fortunately, this doesn't happen for two reasons. Firstly, microbes are tiny. Their movements aren't visible. Secondly, most of this microbial world is in a dark place we can't see. A place without access to oxygen. In our intestines. It's where billions of little creatures are roaming. Feeling kinda crowded, huh? Some of them appeared before we were born, but most were colonists who came with food and water. On your body's surface, all microbes come from the environment. Every corner of your skin is covered with microbes. No matter how you try, it's impossible to get rid of them. There are more microbes than human cells. Our genome consists of about 20,000 genes. The number of microbes genes in the human body is about 2 to 20,000 million. That means that technically, we're not people, but microbes. Fortunately, it's not so bad. The genome of microbes complements our own. Such a model of existence reveals many opportunities for medicine. The human microbiome includes bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms, all of them divided into many species, and each type performs its own functions. Some microbes are responsible for vitamin extraction from food. Others help the breakdown of destructive substances. Another type helps your tummy digest food. A separate group regulates your immune system, protects it against ills, parasites, and viruses. Some control weight. Simply put, microbes make your life better, help your body function, and affect your health. There are microorganisms that provoke many diseases. They impair immunity or affect vital organs. Imagine you know exactly which bacteria are responsible for feeling unwell. Next, you find a way to rid yourself of them. It can be some pill with poison against those microbes. You drink it, and the cure erases all the harmful pests inside your body. A disease might appear because of the lack of beneficial microbes. This is one of the ways doctors heal many people in the world. Now let's say you've determined a group of microbes that help strengthen muscles. Then you find out which trace element helps these bacteria work faster and more efficiently. You add this vitamin to food or just get a pill containing 1 billion of these microbes. As a result, your muscles grow twice as fast. The presence of some microbes or the lack of others can show the state of your entire body. A sample of your microbes can indicate your level of health or the presence of some disease. Any person can improve their body not only with the help of genetic engineering, but with microbial medicine. Studying human microbes is cheaper, more efficient, and faster than expensive, complex gene modifications. This area is just beginning to develop all over the world, but there are already some discoveries. Previously, humanity thought microbes were enemies. We made up many ways to destroy bacteria and viruses. But along with the harmful germs, these cures get rid of the good ones. Now scientists understand that microbes can both take away and save lives, so they started large-scale research on this subject. Let's have a look at a big panda. This animal, with an ample supply of fat under its skin, is omnivorous. It rarely eats meat. Its diet mostly consists of berries and bamboo shoots. But in winter, there's none of this, so pandas feed on bamboo leaves. That food is low-calorie. There's almost no proteins in it. But still, pandas don't lose weight after a cold winter. Recently, scientists found out how pandas do that. It's all thanks to a unique microbiome. Every winter, a lot of unique bacteria are born in their intestines. These microbes extract and synthesize helpful substances from bamboo leaves better than others, and thus preserve the panda's weight. Scientists put these bacteria inside field mice. Small rodents began to gain weight much faster. Hamburgers, cakes, and other heavy foods contain calories and help develop colonies of microbes that contribute to weight. Millions of species of microbes have millions of functions. In theory, each of these functions can be used for the sake of humans. So, imagine you need to lose or gain weight, and you just add these microbes to your lunch. Do you want to sleep better or fight drowsiness? Drink microbes that will affect the production of sleep hormones. Do you want to strengthen the bone tissue? No problem! Bacteria are not only inside our bodies, they're everywhere. Part of the planet is made up of microbes. These tiny organisms are constantly multiplying. Look, there are 1 trillion of them on your keyboard. One bacterium increases in size and splits into 2 bacteria. After a few minutes, these 2 increase and divide again. 4 microorganisms appear. Each of them splits in 2. The colony of bacteria is rapidly growing. With such quick reproduction, one microbe can make 1 ton of offspring in just 24 hours. After 5 days, bacteria will fill all the seas and oceans. They will weigh more than the whole planet. Under ideal conditions, bacteria could take over the whole world. However, this will never happen. There are no such perfect conditions for uncontrolled bacterial growth. The speed they multiply at is equal to the speed of their destruction. Dryness, water, light, high temperature, gases, humidity, all these phenomena help control their population. At the same time, microbes are in charge of most of the chemical reactions on Earth. An old apple on the ground is rotting because of germs and bacteria. Mold forms on bread because of microorganisms. But they don't just exist and affect the condition of any material and other living creatures. An endless battle for survival continues in the world of microorganisms. Giant bacteria absorb smaller ones. Microbes with spikes defeat long microbes. There are also viruses that penetrate bacteria and infect them with their cells. A small ball with a virus can destroy an entire colony of microbes. Viruses multiply and take over more and more territories until they meet strong immune cells on their way. There are also creatures resembling robots. They look like diamonds with mechanical legs. Despite this unusual appearance, they're 100% natural. We call them bacteriophages. They have only one purpose: to destroy all bacteria. Bacteriophages are additional protection of the planet from uncontrolled reproduction of microbes. When some microorganisms multiply, they leave decay waste. This waste is harmful to humans. Bacteriophages fight these microbes and save our lives. The coolest thing is that these defenders don't seek to take over the planet. They only attack bacteria. Every second, billions of microbes battle with billions of bacteriophages on any surface. Sounds like a video game. The crystal-headed jumps on the bacterium and injects the genetic code inside it. This code has separate elements that connect to each other inside the microbe's body and becomes a new bacteriophage. Then it destroys the bacterium from the inside and goes for the next one. Look closely at your fingertip. There's a lot of life there. The strongest survive, the weak disappear. Wash it off, and new bacteria will come along with the water. Wipe your wet finger with a towel, and new germs will jump on you from there. And the battle will begin again. This is just the tip of your finger. Inside your body, some bacteria are fighting for your health against microbes that want to harm you. Some microbes in our intestine can be responsible for a good or bad mood. There are also parasitic bacteria that can affect our brain, the way we think, and our emotions. Some creatures control the behavior of animals and insects. Scientists constantly make discoveries in the world of microorganisms. So, bacteria are the rulers of our world. They appeared long before humans and the first animals, and most likely, they'll remain after us. Think about that.
Just like we swing our arms while walking, some dinosaurs, coelophyses, used to wag their tails from side to side in the opposite direction with each step. This way, they would keep balance and conserve energy. Monkeys and squirrels use their tail to hold onto a branch. Alligators have very long tails that help them swim faster. Dogs wag their tails to communicate. For example, when they're happy. Crocodiles or kangaroos use tails to protect themselves if some animal goes after them. Birds, reptiles, mammals, and even fish have tails. For mammals, it's a great help with balance. But humans walk on 2 legs, and that's how we keep our balance. Having a tail might just slow us down and make it harder to walk. Tails evolved more than 500 million years ago. Our ancestors from that time used tails for swimming, like fish. Primates needed tails to balance while climbing trees. But 25 million years ago, apes lost their tails because they split from monkeys. When they're walking on 4 legs, animals need plenty of energy for every step they take. But walking upright on 2 legs requires less energy because gravity does some of the work. When you take a step, gravity pulls you forward a little bit. That's how humans save 25% of energy because we walk on 2 legs. Humans don't need tails for balance either. Your head is on top of the body when you're walking, not in front. Having a tail also means having 1 extra limb that requires energy to grow and maintain. Evolution made sure we don't lose any extra energy. In nature, losing just a little bit more energy than necessary means you can quickly get eaten. There are genes in charge of developing tails, Scientists believe mutations randomly altered some apes 20 million years ago and caused them to grow a stump of a tail, or nothing at all. Later, that mutation became a norm in humans and apes. First, apes were way bigger than monkeys, and it made it easier for them to fall while climbing trees. But somehow, their mutation became their advantage because they continued to develop and evolved, getting stronger and more balanced without a tail. Humans are shorter, lighter, and have smaller bones compared to our ancestors from 100,000 years ago. The decrease has been gradual, but has become most noticeable in the last 10,000 years. The environment, genetics, and lifestyle practices like using technology and diet all affect our size. 40,000 years ago, European men were on average 6 feet tall. They were both hunters and gatherers that lived in harsh, challenging conditions. They had a very physically demanding lifestyle, so they needed bigger bodies to survive. 10,000 years ago, European males were 5 feet 4 inches tall. Many scientists think it's because of climatic changes in adapting to agriculture. Today, European men are 5 feet 9 inches tall. The last couple of 100 years has brought an increase in height because of better healthcare and diet. Also, humans have smaller jaws and teeth. Since we started cooking, food is now softer, and we don't need such strong teeth and jaws to chew it. As we get older, our face becomes more and more asymmetrical. Our bones don't grow after puberty, but cartilage still does. That's why the nose and ears grow and change as you get older. Some things that affect your face don't happen on both sides. If the skin starts sagging on the right side of your face, it doesn't mean the same will happen to the left side. You can't cry in space. Tears can form, but they can't fall because there's no gravity, and they can't flow. The water that builds up in the corner of your eyes will stay there like a bubble until the tear becomes so big it just moves somewhere else on your face, or you remove it. A big part of the dust you see in your house is old skin particles. We lose 30 to 40,000 skin cells every minute because our skin regenerates. The old skin makes 1 billion tons of dust in the atmosphere. Skin is the largest organ that we have. It makes 15% of our total body weight. There are more living organisms on your skin than there are people on our planet. It's a tiny ecosystem with more than 1.5 trillion bacteria. If you get more mosquito bites than your friend does, there could be a couple of reasons. We emit carbon dioxide when breathing out, and we produce it more when our body is more active. For example, during a workout. Mosquitoes can detect changes in carbon dioxide in their surroundings, and more CO2 means there's a potential host around, so they'll move your way. Some people's skin also have a specific odor that attracts them more, and that's a combination of genetics and bacteria on our skin. Mosquitoes avoid people whose skin hosts many different microbes. They'll be more attracted to you if you're wearing black. The buzzing you hear in your ears when these insects are around is just a side effect of their wings beating. When a mosquito bites you, it pierces your skin and uses a special part of its body to take your blood. As it does it, it injects some saliva into your skin. Your body then reacts to it, and the result is that unpleasant sensation and a bump. The human brain only makes up 2% of our total body weight, but it's the organ that burns the most energy. When we rest, which means we're not engaged in any particular activity, just basics like breathing, keeping ourselves warm, or digesting, the brain still uses up to 25% of the total amount of energy our bodies have. That's 350 to 450 calories per day. Most of the energy goes on, enabling neurons or brain cells to communicate with each other. They do it through structures called synapses, and this process is one of the most energy-expensive ones in the brain. You will spend 1/3 of your life sleeping, and a good chunk of that will involve dreaming. You mostly won't remember any of those dreams when you wake up. Even when you do, there's a good chance they'll vanish into thin air a couple of minutes after you wake up. Scientists have a theory of why this happens. As we fall asleep, some parts of our brain go offline, but not all at the same time. Hippocampus is a structure inside the brain, the main job of which is to transfer information from short-term to long-term memory. Yep, it's in charge of learning new things. The hippocampus is one of the last areas to go to sleep. It means it could also be the last one that wakes up. Training dragons, taking the math exam you hadn't studied for, trying to run while your legs can't move, you can have your latest dreams in the short-term memory. But since the hippocampus isn't quite awake, your brain won't keep any of those. This doesn't mean the hippocampus is not active at all during the night. It's actually busy storing our existing memories, so it doesn't work with short-term ones like dreams. We get more tired when it's hot outside. When you spend some time in the sun, Your body needs to work hard to maintain a normal and consistent temperature. It dilates the blood vessels, which means more blood can flow near the surface of your skin. Warm blood can cool off and release heat as it moves near the skin. Since blood flow is increased, you may look redder when you're feeling hot. Your body will secrete sweat, which evaporates and cools the skin when it's too hot. But to do such extra work, both your metabolic rate, which is the number of calories you need to function normally, and heart rate go up. It makes you feel sleepy. Get closer to a mirror and breathe out through the nose. The surface of the mirror will fog up. There will be 2 marks of water vapor, but one is bigger than the other because most of the time, we breathe out of one nostril at a time. In fact, 75% of our breathing is from one nostril, while 25% is from the other. The dominant nostril switches throughout the day, on average, every 2 hours. Some think this happens to build up moisture on both sides, so neither of them get too dry.
Good day, Brightsiders. My name is Tom, and today let's pretend it's year 2003. The place? Indonesia, the island of Flores. A group of scientists found a mysterious cave in the green jungle. They went inside and discovered some primitive tools like sharpened stones. The researchers understood that this place was home to our distant ancestors hundreds of thousands of years ago. But then, they found a very unusual skeleton. A careful analysis showed that it was the skeleton of a 30-year-old woman. Her height was only 3.5 feet. It's just above the waist of a grown-up person. That day, scientists discovered an unknown human ancestor. They called this species Homo floresiensis, or simply the Hobbit. More and more scientists arrived at the cave and carried out detailed excavations. The archaeologists found the remains of 8 more little people. It seemed that hundreds, thousands of years ago, there was an entire species of hobbits. Also, the scientists discovered the remains of some amazing creatures. It turned out that the cave was a real fantasy world in the distant past. For example, the researchers found skeletons of huge storks the size of pterodactyls. The hobbits seemed tiny compared to these birds. The scientists also discovered the remains of what seemed to be a relative of the modern elephant. The creature was the size of a cat. But the most astonishing discovery was the ancient Komodo dragon. The bone analysis showed that all these creatures were not the owners of the cave. More than 80% of the identifiable bones belonged to giant rats. Hundreds and thousands of rats the size of cats inhabited the place. It's possible that a real battle once occurred between them and the hobbits. Just imagine a world where the hobbits and small elephants run away from hordes of huge rats and hide in a cave, and massive storks are watching the events unfolding in front of their eyes. Anyway, the analysis of the remains showed that Homo floresiensis was a different species from modern humans. For example, the researchers analyzed the hobbit's wrist bone and found out that these bones resembled those of monkeys, not those of modern humans. The hobbits' heads had a flat, sloping forehead and a short face, and their teeth and jaws resembled those of Australopithecus. But then, the scientists uploaded all the data from the skull they found into a computer program to create a 3-dimensional image of the hobbit's face. And the computer showed the head of a woman who looked much more like a modern human than like a monkey. But the same skull analysis also showed that the hobbit's brain was about 3 times as small as that of the average modern person. This suggests that their mental abilities were probably not very well developed. The analysis of the bones and tools showed that Homo floresiensis could have lived between 190,000 and 50,000 years ago. It's even possible they lived next to the ancestors of modern people. To find out exactly who the hobbits were and what branch of human evolution they belong to, scientists started a large-scale investigation. A race of pygmies lived not far from the cave. Scientists have found a great similarity in the facial proportions of the hobbits and the pygmies. This tribe could be the direct descendants of the discovered species. The pygmies themselves claimed it was true. They brought food and flowers to the cave as a sign of respect to their ancestors. But to know for sure, scientists needed to do a genetic test. They hired 2 translators, from English to Indonesian, and from Indonesian to the Pygmy language. The researchers explained to the tribe what they wanted to do, and the Pygmies agreed. They showed sincere enthusiasm because they were also very interested in their history. The scientists took saliva samples from 32 volunteers. All they had to do was compare them with the DNA of the hobbits. But that's where a serious problem arose. Extracting DNA from such ancient remains turned out to be an impossible task. That's why the scientists decided to compare the DNA of the pygmies with the DNA of other people from nearby islands and countries. They studied the DNA of 500 modern people from 225 populations in East Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and other countries. The researchers wanted to find matches and differences between the pygmies' DNA and the DNA of the surrounding tribes. They also analyzed the history of the people from these areas and their migration patterns. When the investigation was over, the scientists had to admit they hadn't found any evidence that the pygmies had descended from the ancient hobbits. Homo floresiensis is likely a totally separate species, and its role in the development of modern humans is still unknown. The hobbits' height can be explained by such a phenomenon as insular dwarfism. Unique ecosystems appear on small and remote islands. There are often lots of food sources there, as well as there is a higher chance of survival thanks to the absence of dangerous animals. The climate contributes to development of an unusual ecosystem too. In such conditions, many living creatures become smaller. It happened to little hippos in Madagascar, and small elephants lived on the island of Flores. But sometimes, such ecosystems can create huge animals, just like it happened with the rats and the storks. By the way, gigantic rats still live on the island. In the modern world, there's an unusual village inhabited by dwarfs. There are many small houses there made of clay and stone that resemble little castles. In the streets you can find statues of fairies, large butterflies, and silver balls. The locals wear strange costumes: knight's armor, prince's dresses, green tunics, and yellow cloaks. At the main square, dwarfs fight with swords, dance, and sing songs. But there's no magic here. You're in the Dwarf Empire, and before you get inside, you have to pay a $50 entry fee. More than 10 years ago, a Chinese businessman met several dwarfs. They told him about the difficulties they've come across in the modern world. The businessman felt sympathy for these people and decided to invest $14 million in creating a themed town inhabited by dwarfs. So in 2009, the World Eco Garden of Butterflies and the Dwarf Empire was born. About 100 people live in this place. Their height doesn't exceed 4.5 feet, and they're all younger than 50 years old. Every day, this place attracts hundreds of tourists. Thanks to this, dwarves have jobs and all the conditions for a good life. All employees of the village get a salary of several $100s per month, and they are also provided with free housing and free food. Many little people who have nowhere to go come to this place and find a new home and a new family. By the way, there's another village inhabited by dwarves in China. In Yangtze village, about 40% of all residents are born to be half the height of ordinary people, and no one knows exactly why this happens. Some believe the reason is the high content of mercury in the soil and the presence of toxic gases in the air. There's also a legend that says that once upon a time, a resident of this village caught a black turtle with unusually long legs. He decided to eat this creature, and because of this, the turtle cursed the village. Currently, the number of little people living there is decreasing, and new generations have regular height. Unfortunately, it's difficult to study this phenomenon because the place is closed to press and to visitors. 100 years ago, a small Iranian village existed, with its inhabitants no taller than 3 feet. And long before that, the inhabitants' height could reach 10 inches. This place is 1,500 years old and is considered the birthplace of dwarves. The short stature of people who lived there is associated with poor nutrition. The climate in the region is hot and dry, hence it was impossible to grow crops or breed cattle there. Mostly, they ate turnips and barley. The inhabitants of the village never tasted meat. Only in the 20th century, when roads were built and cars became available, it became possible to bring better food there. Now, about 700 people live in the village and they are all of average height. But small houses made of stone and clay are the proof that dwarves lived there. Such houses are easier to build and heat, but the most important thing is they were invisible to foreign conquerors. The residents hoped that the unique architecture of the place might one day attract more tourists. Thank you for watching. My name is Tom, and see you in the next video where we continue to learn every day together with Brightside. Bye.
Okay, think about it. We are the only animals on the planet who have a chin, just as humans. Primates don't have it, and even our close extinct relatives like Neanderthals never had it either, not by the hair on their chinny-chin chins. Scientists have a couple of theories on why people have chins. First, it could be there to help us chew food, because that extra bone might mitigate stressful mechanical actions like chewing. But if we really needed that kind of support while chewing, we'd probably have more bones on the inner side of the jaw, somewhere near the tongue instead of beneath the jaw. For example, chimpanzees have an additional bone in their lower jaw placed on the tongueward side, something we don't have. Second, we might have the chin to speak easier. Some scientists claim that extra bone below provides some kind of reinforcement. However, we don't use that much force when speaking. Well, some of us do. Third, some researchers say our chin could be something that measures attractiveness when we seek a partner. Hey, nobody can take it on the chin like us humans. Also, the chin could be a result of our skull getting smaller. This is why our mandibles are not as robust than those of our extinct relatives. As they developed, discovered fire, and started cooking their food, they no longer needed strong jaws because the food wasn't so difficult to chew anymore. Elephants have something similar to our chin, but their so-called chin is there because they have a large lower lip, plus a lack of lower teeth. It's not some type of bony protrusion that we have. So, chin up, kiddo! Stay on the bright side! Meanwhile, our cells are so small that if you could get 10,000 of them together, they could fit on the head of a pin. The human brain has an impressive memory capacity. The brain has around 100 billion neurons. You'd need more than 3,000 years to count all of them, so trust me. If we could store one memory on each neuron, our brain would eventually run out of space, and we'd have limited storage space, like on a USB flash drive or an iPod. So yes, it would be possible for our brain to be full. Not mine. Neurons are linked to each other. Each has 1,000 connections to others. That way our memory capacity is exponentially getting bigger. It's hard to measure it, but it could be millions of gigabytes.
If our brain was a digital video recorder, it could record 3 million hours of your favorite shows, and you'd have to leave the television on for over 300 years to do that. Whenever we laugh, think, look at something, dream, move, or do some other activity with our body, small electrical and chemical signals run between neurons along those connections. Our brain is always active, and sometimes it's even more active when we sleep than when we're awake. By the way, neurons make and send more information than all the phones in the whole world. Just one neuron won't generate that much electricity, but all of them together produce enough of it to power a light bulb. Our brain is a wrinkly organ, but if you could open up your head, remove it, and smooth it out, it would lay down flat in the size of an average pillowcase. Whenever an insect lands on your leg, your skin's sensory neurons quickly send a message to your brain at an impressive speed, 150 miles per hour. The brain sends back a message for your leg to shake the insect off even faster, at around 200 miles per hour. Our heart beats more than 3 billion times in the average lifetime and pumps over 47 million gallons of blood. Humans have unique fingerprints. So do koalas, chimpanzees, and gorillas. Other than fingerprints, people have a unique tongue print too, and they have a chin. We are the only animals that sleep on their backs. Also, humans are the only creatures that can draw straight lines, and we have a chin. More than 50,000 of your body cells were replaced by new cells in just a few seconds while you were watching this part. Didn't you notice? Yes, our entire body regenerates. But teeth are the only part that can't heal themselves. Left-handed people mostly chew food on the left side of their mouth, while right-handed people do that on the right. And in each case, we move our chins. Our fingers are very sensitive, but lips are even hundreds of times more. Plenty of animals can move their ears to find a sound source around them, but most people can't move their ears at all. Your left lung is around 10% smaller than the right one, because it needs to allow some space for your heart. Also, it can fit in less air. Your lungs have 1,500 miles of airways and more than 300 million alveoli, which could cover approximately 1/4 of a tennis court. Lungs are the only organ in our body that can float on water. Toenails grow around 4 times slower than your fingernails. It happens because we do more things with our hands than our feet, so we cause more trauma to our fingernails. Muscle is a word that was originally a Latin term, which means little mouse. When ancient Romans would flex their bicep muscles, it reminded them of a mouse. Heck, my biceps look like little hamsters. Our brain takes and uses more than 1/4 of the total oxygen our body receives. Each of us has more microbes than there are stars in our galaxy, trillions and trillions of them. There are billions of bacteria only in our mouth, and over 2,300 types of bacteria in our belly button. Ew! But they're also tiny that if you could put all the microbes from our body together, they'd weigh as much as your brain, around 3 pounds. There's a high possibility your right hand has different types of microbes than the left one. It happens because they cover our skin from head to toe, and their variety depends on our skin thickness, humidity, temperature, texture, and chemistry, which can change as we use our right and left hand in different ways. There are more microbes than our own human cells in our body, but no worries, they make things like the digestive, immune system, and our brain work properly. Sense of taste is about 10,000 times less sensitive than the sense of smell. The flavor is just a mix of smell and taste perception. Normally, we think we can sense taste, but smell is dominant when it comes to recognizing what we eat. Also, the sense of smell is related to our memories. Particularly, smells can almost immediately bring back memories and trigger some quite strong emotions. How about Grandma's chocolate chip cookies? Get equipped for any season with brand new Brightside merch. Click the link and grab your print. A normal heart rate of an average adult is 75 beats per minute. When you turn on your favorite song or simply enjoy listening to some music, the heartbeat syncs with the rhythm. Our eyes are compelling, and our vision is so strong we can see the light coming from a candle flame even when it's more than 1.7 miles away. On average, humans have so much fat in our body we could produce 7 bars of soap. Our nails and hair are made of keratin, a material we can find in certain body parts of some other animals. For instance, claws, hooves, horns, wool, fur, feathers, beaks, turtle shells, and porcupine quills. An average lifespan of an eyelash is around 150 days, and then it falls out. The hyoid bone, placed in our throat, is the only bone in our body not attached to other bones. It's also the only jointless bone in our body. Out of 206 bones in our body, 52 are in our feet, 28 in toes only. The smallest bone in our body, the stapes, is in the middle ear. It's only 1/10 of an inch long and is surrounded by other tiny bones inside the ear. They're all so small they could fit on a penny, but also very important, because without them we wouldn't be able to hear. Our hair helps us hear. Not the one that grows on our head, but our cochlea has approximately 15,000 microscopic hair cells. They sense every movement that gets into the cochlea and catch, then carry the sound right to our auditory nerve. From there, vibrations and movements are sent to the brain, and then we can recognize what's that sound we heard. Our body is made of stardust. Plenty of elements in our body have come through a couple of supernovas. The first stars were just gassy lumps that were drawn together and, at some point, started the process of combustion. All this led to a nuclear reaction in its center. Stars that were right there after the Big Bang were over 50 times bigger than our Sun. There was a constant process of making the elements inside them, and those giant stars were burning their fuel faster. Most of the elements in the human body were formed in those stars over billions of years, even before the Big Bang happened. And yet, we humans stand alone because we have a chin. That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like and share it with your friends. Or if you want more, just click on these videos and stay on the bright side.